Welcome to the Independent Characters, episode 210. This is Carl.
This is Jody.
And this is Justin.
And tonight we are coming at you with Champions of 40K, the Powers of Chaos2. Yes. This is the second time we have done that. So I brought both of my chaotic allies in here.
Mm-hmm. Someday we got to throw down some APOG goodness, just a tide of chaos at somebody.
That would be super
so
fun.
Much chaos.
And I get to use my Titan.
That's
Titans.
Okay, flex, whatever. Cool.
By the way, when it is kind of spoiler alert, but when Caleb comes next time, he's going to take my Warhound with him.
He's been talking about
He's
that
been
for
trying
a while.
to get me to do it forever. I'm fine.
It only took
I'm like, fine.
It only took an apocalypse, worldwide apocalypse for him. To,
well, yeah. Well,
speaking of chaos.
All right. So we've got Jody and Justin with me. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. This is
always
a great
fun.
show. It's about 3 hours of content.
Buckle up, kiddos.
Yeah, hang tight. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. It was a fun discussion, but we hope you enjoy. But before we jump into that, let's leap into Elite Choice. Mm-hmm. And Justin, you want to start with yours?
Absolutely. First off, Elite Choice, everybody, is our top picks from the community page of the Independent Characters. If you're not a part of that, what are you doing? Go there, be nice, and be inspired.
Yeah.
And be there. I had to pick this model. It just popped out to me. I saw it pop up, and it's Mr. Garrick Eisenbeiss.
Uh-huh.
And I hope I pronounced that right. This guy is super cool. I actually had the pleasure of meeting him in one of the first classes that I helped with down in LA. Phenomenal painter. He's doing some crazy stuff with like colored pencils or the oil pencils and things like that. Mm-hmm. I had to pick this Primaris Marine. Phenomenal work. This was kind of a dedication to his boy, Brennan, who is a Marine.
Nice.
He's in the Marine Corps, and this was kind of like a fun little project that he could paint up for his boy, which obviously kind of rad. And just a prime example of brush control, and everything from brush control to color placement to battle damage, and especially face work. The work that he put into the face really shows how you can really work all kinds of colors that you would not normally work into skin tones, such as like teals and purples and reds, and you can just tell like this dude can paint. And I remember teaching the class and just looking at his model like, dude, just
keep going.
Yep. You got this, dude. You're doing good. I mean, he's a very talented dude, and I love it, dude. I love something I want to start doing more of is painting models for other people. It's one of the main reasons I bought the Indominus box.
Is that what you want to do? Hang on, I can help you out.
Yeah. Well,
Carl knows a guy.
For gifts, for Christmas presents and things like that, especially to like family members and, even father-in-laws or whatever, like let them have a piece of what is artwork.
Yeah.
This is art that we're doing. This isn't just us painting spacemen. So
it is, but
I mean, it's
also art.
But yeah, just really well done, and keep it up, dude. You're a phenomenal painter.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece. The battle damage is really well done and consistent, not doesn't look consistent. It looks random, but it's applied evenly across his body, and which is always something like, being careful about how and where you're doing that sort of thing. And then, the face has just so much character and life in it, too. Those additional colors, really nicely done.
Yes, sir.
What about you, Jody?
All right. I went with Andrew Killick.
Yeah.
This gets the nod for my Elite Choice because it's just such a unique aesthetic. So Andrew
so cool.
has his Triskelion chapter, which, lest I am mistaken, is a riff on Celtic mythology. And he's done somewhat and I don't mean this in a negative way, a somewhat kind of cartoony style. Mm-hmm. It's real clean.
It's the extreme highlighting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Really clean, kind of flat colors.
Yep.
But it works. It's not, it's intentional. It's an aesthetic choice. It's not a lack of ability by any stretch. And he made a point about not really liking Marines and tabards, which is a sentiment after my own heart. I get a little bit over Marines being covered in tabards. If you're a Dark Angel,
I love it.
If you're a Dark Angel or
Templar.
you're a Black Templar, sure, that's your shtick. But every Marine having a tabard is a bit much. So he converted his own librarian, his own chaplain out of a Reaver,
That
which
chaplain
was so
looks
great.
sick, dude. That is a sick model right there.
And there's a part of this that I got to be like fully honest. This really reminds me of one of the guys I used to game with, one of the guys, Steve, from my old original game group. This kind of freehand of the Triskelions and the kind of Celtic markings, tribal markings. Yeah. That was all stuff that this friend of mine really embraced and used. And it's just it's
well done,
really beautifully done and unique aesthetic. So it really just jumped out to me as being something different. At some point, and I don't mean to be negative at all, it's going to sound it, and I apologize, but at some point, like, I've seen so many Marines painted beautifully over the years that it's really rare that I see a Marine, no matter how beautifully it's done, and I really go like, wow, that's neat. It's like, oh, it's another beautifully painted Marine. And these really caught my eye, and I was like, holy cow, this is so different.
It is very different. That's actually funny that you mentioned that. Like, I remember the first time I went to Adepticon, and you'd walk around and you'd look at a ton of beautifully painted armies, and at a certain point you kind of get numb to it, and you're just like, yeah, another cool painted army. And
it's that thing of a lot of times to make something unique, people will be like, oh, well, here's my hot pink orcs, and it's like, okay,
but they're pink.
That doesn't like, you did something extreme. This feels totally on brand. It doesn't feel like
I get
something out of left
field.
Feel
like a story is told here. Yeah. Like, one of the guys is an arch druid. One's a priest. Like, I dig it.
Dog.
Yeah, the dog is cool. The dog guy.
Yeah.
Is cool.
So Andrew, hats off to you, man. That well is an incredibly unique. And man, the look at the arch druid's power weapon effect, it is so clear that this is an aesthetic choice. This isn't any sort of lack of ability or anything. It's just a very unique style. So love to see that.
Very, very, very cool. Well, I went with David Moss and his third of the Supreme Command for his Sons of Elysium chapter. And he did I just thought this was a fantastic version of an apothecary. It's a new model, but it's been modified a little bit. But really, where it stood out to me was the attention to detail on the base, where this is horrific to look at. This guy,
that is part of David's deal.
Horrifying to look at. Even the damage to the top of the head of the guy that he has removed the progenoid gland from is just disgusting. I'm not saying. Let me rephrase that, because I'm not saying the progenoid gland came from the head. I'm just saying the Marine is clearly wounded beyond repair at this point. But the eye in particular, the soul eye in the guy on the base's head is what really sold it for me. Yeah. Just looks horrific. And just the blood, and the other nice approach to detail is kind of the helix thing on top of his skull, where I feel like it's like that medical kind of helix thing. You got to talk into a mic there while you're leaning over.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at Pat.
But it is quite good, and I really like the character of it too, so it really stands out.
David, you're getting awful close to getting retired, though, my friend. You just keep doing
Have
so
we
many,
picked him again?
many times.
All right, that's it. That's it. 3 times, and then you go to the
wasn't
you go
he
to the
the
Hall of
Slanesh
Champions.
Titan?
Yes.
All right, it's 3 times, then Hall of Champions.
Okay, and he was also the cult army with the guys in the grinder on the front of that Josh picked a couple times.
Right. Sorry, buddy.
David Moss
you're
can't
too
be
talented.
picked
I'm
anymore.
sorry, you're just too good.
You maxed out. You achieved your final form.
I actually, so as long as we're going to do this, he also had a Slaneshi, what's the little errant knight?
Oh,
the Hell Dog? War Dog?
And he did one with like a bovine Slaneshi head on it that just blew me away. But I was like, no, I'm not picking yours anymore. So right. David, congratulations. And
you're in the Hall of Veterans.
Welcome to the Hall. Yeah, the Hall of Veterans.
You and Jeremy can sit down and have a brewski.
There you go. All right, guys. So you know what? We're going to launch into this episode where we're just basically going to take a look at in-depth at each of us take a look at 2 different characters that we really, really like in the game. And we'll talk a little bit about them from a lore perspective, from rules, from models, the whole 9 yards. You know what's up. So by now,
for chaos.
So
take a little ride.
Take care, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Matt here to welcome you into 2020 and tell you about an amazing new offer from Table War. All returning customers receive an extra 10% off Table War's US web store. Need a tower case? 10% off. Need a new fat mat? 10% off. Need a macro mat, geomat, or just some accessories? All 10% off. This offer starts January 1st and will continue on throughout 2020. No coupon required. Just ensure you have an account and this discount is automatic. This is our way of saying thank you to all of our loyal customers. So visit us today at tablewar.com. Table War. Table War is a registered trademark of Table War Designs, Inc., all rights reserved.
All right, let's kick it off with a little bit of hobby progress. And mine's short, so I'll just go first and get it out of the way. With the Astronomicon in the condition it's in, I can't really airbrush where I normally airbrush. I can't. There's no light in here because the power's out because of the car accident. So I finally decided I got to do something. So I'll start assembling Sisters of Battle. You know, I'm not going to paint anytime soon, but I might as well get them assembled. So I assembled Celestine, who is quite a few parts for a model that kind of took me by surprise. Like even the hair is a different piece. Like half of the hair is a different piece, and the way you put the head into the hair, it's a beautiful model.
Yeah, the way these kits go together anymore is fascinating.
So assembled Celestine and assembled the Canoness that I got at the Adepticon kind of preview 2 years ago.
Yeah. Cool.
So she's pretty cool.
Nice.
So very excited about those models. So I'll just, slowly start working through the pile of boxes over there that I have of Sisters of Battle stuff.
Well, you do have easy access to those boxes now.
Yeah, this is true.
They're all over the floor.
Well, also because they're stacked carefully on the floor. They're not just like I also, with the fires and everything in California now, there was a warning on the other side of town, and Shell, my wife, was saying, when I was a kid, there was a fire on El Toro, which is the hill that I kind of live up near, and she had said, if the wind had blown the other way, that fire would have come down into these homes here. And that got me all freaked out. So I was like, you know what? We need to pack a bunch of stuff in case we got to get out of here. And there was like warnings that there were going to be additional lightning storms. And I'm thinking El Toro was a hill, so it could get hit. And I'm like, let's just pack up some stuff. So we're like, okay, we need these papers. We need blah, blah, blah. And Shell looks around and she goes, maybe you should pack up a couple of your favorite armies as well.
Save the Titans.
Yeah. So packed up all my Thousand Suns, all my Tzeentch demons. I would take the Titan that Caleb painted, and that'd be it. Like I would lose the rest, but I might grab Cthulhu over there and throw him in the back of the truck.
Yeah, it was really interesting listening to the last Splinter Mind podcast, which I think is just for Patreons
where
right now.
He actually had to evacuate.
Yeah, it was just like, man, putting yourself into that mental space of like, what do I save and
what do I lose?
Yeah.
And so, I packed everything up in my Table War cases over there in a KR3. And I was like, oh, everything else would be gone, So it's a weird space to be in. Now, to be fair, fire has not come anywhere near my place.
Yeah, we've been fortunate.
Smoke is heavy here. It's across the freeway and back a few miles, and like a 6-lane freeway. Like the likelihood of us being impacted is probably fairly low compared to guys like Josh.
You stop talking right now.
Brian.
It's 2020 and the year's not over.
Oh, you know what? Good point.
You take that back.
I definitely don't want to say it'll never happen.
No.
But I hear you. That's a
but
good,
yeah, I mean,
good
it's
move.
scary, right? I mean, you live down the street from me, Justin.
Yeah,
so
for those listeners
Crystal
that don't know, I'm
was
like
freaked out a little
literally 5 minutes away. Yeah, and the wife's pinging me at work, like, should we evacuate? I mean, I was like, no, I haven't. I assume we'd get a text message. you know.
We were getting a lot of those messages, but luckily where we live in Santa Cruz is a good distance away from Josh and Brian. And I was telling people, like, if it gets to us, there is no more Santa Cruz. So
Right.
we would be at the end of that. Very unfortunate.
Say that to those Paradise Fire people, right? There's no more Paradise.
Well, there you go. Yeah, growing up at the very north end of the state, it was weird how almost indifferent to this whole thing I've been. I'm like, yeah, it's late summer. Of course it's smoky and there's stuff on fire and people are in the mountains or, and it wasn't, I don't mean to be callous in any way. It's just such a normal part of the end of summer for me growing up, surrounded by mountains. It's terrible. My heart goes out to all those folks and those families who are displaced and making the best of it. But on some, to put a weird positive, and this is a real weird positive kind of thought on it, was there any element of thinking about going, I have these armies and everything else is gone, that was like liberating a little?
In some ways, I'd be like, boy, people would stop giving me crap about not finishing painting my Black Legion because they'd be gone.
Because they'd be literally
very black.
Ash. Yeah, very black.
My melted Legion. But I mean, yes and no. I mean, I have a lot of stuff, and I would much prefer to sell off anything that I'm not gonna use. But I mean, for me, it was also like, well, I'd lose all these Minotaurs, and I'm like, and these are a piece of history of 40K,
Right.
And they'd be gone permanently. And it's like, okay, well, I can't take all of everything,
Right.
You know, and to me, I kind of looked at, well, what have I invested the most money into? And realistically, I've invested the most money into commissioning Colin to paint those Thousand Suns, commissioning Dave Paints to paint my Tzeentch Demons. Plus, I love those two armies. Like, they are, you know, every time I play, those are the armies I'm playing. So, yeah, the rest, you know, okay.
Yeah.
You know,
It's kind of an interesting mental exercise to go through, you know, because like living in the U.S., people sometimes get flooded out, you know, if they're in the South or
two hurricanes.
We have hurricanes right now. We have fires. It's just an interesting thing to think about, like, you know, or heaven forbid if whatever your oven caught on fire, and you know what I mean? Like, maybe it's a good idea to have a plan. A plan, or just like some stuff that's important to you, like easily accessible.
Well, as I gave this thought, I was like, and that was part of also why I assembled the Sisters of Battle, because I was like, well, I've got these 2 empty Detolf cases, because I think I might just keep my Tzeentch stuff in
Just packed up
stuff, like, you know, in table war cases where I can just go if I gotta go. And
it's
and it's easy to play out of those. So
totally,
it's, you know, your go box, as it were.
Yeah.
40K doomsday prepping.
So I think that's my plan. Speaking of table war cases, by the way, they got a whole bunch in. So if you're looking to order, now's the time to order.
Yeah, I need one of those so bad.
They are super great.
So bad.
Super great. Yep. So, so yeah, I mean, it is a weird mental exercise to go through. Everything's okay. I mean, well, other than
the car-shaped hole.
Fine.
I am the living embodiment of everything's fine with everything burning around here right now. This room is destroyed.
Yeah.
It used to be all organized and clean. It's an absolute disaster at the moment. It just, you know, it is. You know,
Recording by candlelight. It's kind of romantic,
pretty much.
though.
I could get some candles in here.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Until we burn the house down with the candles. So anyway,
Stop tempting fate, man.
Dude, at this point, just hit me. You know, like, I'm just
give it to me.
You know,
I'm ready.
No, don't.
We had the problem with the pool. I drained the pool 2 feet. We had
my van got broken into. About $3,000 worth of power tools and stuff gone.
One thing after another.
Come on. Thank God for insurance. You know,
I don't want to say it anyway.
Yeah.
So So at least I started assembling some models. Man, those Sisters. When you're used to painting like Primaris and Chaos Space Marines, and then you get these, you're like, oh, these guys are kind of tiny.
Yeah, a little finicky.
Oh boy,
some detail required.
This is gonna interesting. This is gonna be interesting. So that's me. You know, mostly been playing role playing games and prepping for role playing games.
Yeah, you have.
So
no books though, huh? That's unlike you. No books.
No, haven't.
Wow.
I've read non 40K books. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, just mostly been. Just palate cleansing there.
There you go.
So.
Resetting that mechanism right
there.
Jody?
It is.
There
it is.
All right, Jody, what about you?
Well, it's been a minute since I've been on, so I got some stuff done. Although all of this kind of happened in the last, month, so it hasn't been that long. I went through a little bit of a palate cleanser and resetting the mechanism over the summer of just kind of reevaluating where I was at in the hobby.
Resetting the palate
mentally and mechanically. Somebody recently, and I apologize that I don't have the community member off the top of my head, but somebody just posted about when you're totally kind of just not motivated, what do you do?
I saw that, yeah.
And it was so interesting to me because I was just kind of coming out of that state during the summer. So what did I do? In the last month, I finished listening to Black Legion, the second
I
of
saw
the Black
this on
Legion
your
books.
Notes. Yes. Let's go through your stuff, then come back to that because I want to talk about that.
Then moving on, what have I painted? Let me see. I painted 12 Space Hulk doors that are actually Sedition Wars. That was the Mike McVeigh Cool Mini or Not game.
Nice.
They showed up on Miniature Market for a super reasonable price.
And, that's right. That's where you did the panel liners, right?
And I hit those with just airbrush and real quick and dirty. I mean, it's first edition matching doors for blinging out my first edition Space Hulk copy, which is kind of a weird flex, but okay. But yeah, then I saw you using the Tamiya panel liners on one of your videos you posted, Justin, and was like, okay, those look like they are taking a thing that takes time and making it easier, which is generally anymore my approach to the hobby is there a way I can do the thing I want to do faster and easier than I'm currently doing it. I spent the many years looking at the nuanced in depth, and let me delve the hobby and look at like wet blending and getting a buttery blend. And like I've gone down that road. It's great. I love it. I'll revisit it someday. But for now, it's min-max painting. It's how do I get maximum effect? And those seemed like a great tool. There are some considerations to be made, I found.
Sure is, yeah.
Namely just how that product's going to react with what the initial coat you put down was. That was very eye-opening.
Yeah. You experienced a little bit of bleed, right?
I did. What was funny is when it was just the Minotaur base coat that had been airbrushed on and allowed to dry for a few days and then panel line that, it didn't bleed much at all. A little bit, but not much. And then I think I reached out to you and you're like, oh yeah, you want to clear coat it and use a gloss clear coat and
optimally.
Right.
Or let that underlying paint dry for a day or two.
Right. And then the clear coat, I didn't let that dry long enough and that bled terribly. So really it seemed like it was a function of drying time more so than what was underneath. Yeah. But once whatever was underneath, they work as advertised. They are.
Yeah, just kind of definitely, capillary action.
Yep.
Loving.
Yeah. It was super easy for that project. And because it was a project that was, about trying out something new.
Sure.
It was great to experiment with that, and certainly something I'm happy to have in the toolkit. I painted 20 Trader Guard. These are the Blackstone Trader Guardsmen.
Great.
They are so awesome.
Dear GW, wish listing, please get us a box of those Trader Guard dudes that isn't mixed in with a bunch of Blackstone stuff that I don't really want.
Please do not. Because if they do a Trader Guard army.
Oh, I'm already, that is my next project.
I can't do it.
Well, I got all the demons, and now I've got this other new project that I've been mocked a few times. Thank you, those who mocked me from the community group. Totally fair for the next thing I'm going to talk about.
That's what friends are for.
Yeah, it's good, fair ribbing that I took. So I painted up a Hellbrute, the Dark Vengeance one-piece Hellbrute, which is just such a cool model. I'm only, 6 years late to that party.
Yeah.
For my Iron Warriors army that is underway. And the comments that were like, I thought this was going to be a kill team.
You're pretty much crusade ready almost, huh?
But this is how kill team works.
Yeah. Yes.
It's the objective of kill team.
It really is. And, just the stars had to align. Like things had to come together in that I'd always wanted a Trader Guard army to be a part of my Demon Legion because I have 3 of the 4 gods of chaos all put together. And I'd always wanted a Trader Guard force that was like the mortal component of that.
Yeah.
So thus my do make it easily accessible Trader Guardsmen so I can build a Trader Guard army.
It's coming eventually.
Well, they already got the models.
Just
I know.
Put them in a box, man. Let me buy them. Yeah. But yeah, then I started looking into the fiction, and for whatever reason, when I started reading up on Iron Warriors that I'd always kind of just offhanded dismissed as a chapter I wasn't interested in, I realized no, they're all about demonic possession, and they're all about that sort of thing, especially with the technovirus aspect.
Have you read Storm of Iron yet?
I have not. Yeah,
I thought of Storm of Iron when I saw your cultists. 'Cause as I recall, I read that book a long time ago. But all the
Jody, I'm going to tell you right now.
No,
you have very high standards for literature.
But I can enjoy popcorn when
there
it's
was enough cool parts in it, like visually. When I read that a long time ago. It's probably a horrible book, but
cool.
Yeah, it's 40K. It's not heresy,
I've got, luckily, I'm in the position of I am not reading anything 40K related until next May.
I just feel like we've got you on a roll here.
Okay.
And I don't want to break that mojo.
Well, anyways, there were some really cool Imperial Guardsmen in there, and they had red jumpsuits, and your guys made me think of that.
They're little black uniforms and red hats.
I agree with you that some of the visualizations, hey, read it, man.
Now, is that part of
I'm just saying, I don't think it's going to resonate with you.
Is that part of the greater Iron Warrior omnibus situation? That's
I think it is. It's all Graham McNeil, right?
Yeah, it's all Graham. Yeah.
So, I mean, certainly I'm curious just because if it's a faction I'm into, and I know, mileage varies greatly on the Black Library stuff.
I mean, the thing with Black Library stuff too, I find is even if I read a book that's kind of lackluster as far as plot line and character development, at least you'll get out of it
you can
some cool hobby ideas, or you'll get some visual,
or scenes. Some scenes are cool.
Yeah. I liked for that, I'll say there were scenes in Dark Imperium, which is widely considered to be pretty awful. The end scene I want somebody to make the reboot jumping off of the ledge, stabbing the giant dragon demon thing in the head. Like, I want to see that picture. Somebody make that. That was a super cool comic book scene.
It's a
terrible novel, but it's a great scene.
It's very, I don't want to even say controversial. It's just like some people like it, some people don't.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just one of those things.
Your mileage may vary.
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, yeah, the Iron Warriors are starting in earnest, which takes me to, I'm going to jump into my builds. So my hobby desk kind of just exploded.
Nice.
And then I started getting build happy. So I got a bunch of stuff from Herrick Games, and I got my first new
By
Chaos.
the way, his house is okay.
His house is okay. Yeah, I've been keeping
very,
in real
very excited for
regular
Scott.
contact since he's moved to the neighborhood of the extended Santa Cruz. So yeah, I was very happy to see his got close.
Yep.
Yeah, that got
For sure.
iffy.
He thought it would be gone.
Yeah.
And he is donating all his proceeds from the company to firefighters.
Yep.
Yeah, so if
that
you
area.
want to
for
send
like a
some
month,
love that
which
way.
is pretty awesome.
So from him, I got a box of Chaos Space Marine, just regular dudes. I didn't go too crazy because, I've done this enough times of building a new army to know I don't need to build the whole army right now. Build something and paint it. Buy something, build it, paint it, and be responsible, and that works well for me.
There you go.
So picked up some of the new Chaos Space Marines. My goodness, are the new guys so much more detailed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The degree,
They're
bigger.
beautiful.
they're bigger. The amount of detail, the crispness of the detail. I got
The poses.
somebody donated some of the oldies to me, and I was like, bits. And then I started putting them side by side, and I was like, nope,
No.
There's
they're
no
not even
comparison.
usable for bits.
I had
Well,
painted-
they're usable.
I painted probably 20 old Black Legion guys, and I'm just like, no, it's just
Yeah, they just
I
don't,
don't want anyone.
hold up at
just
all.
replacing them all.
And I know a lot of people had strong feelings about those being super monopose. They're not at all. Like, the torso builds one way.
Well, in comparison to what you had before, they
Right.
are a bit monopose, but they adjust a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the arms, you can stick whatever arms on whatever torso with whatever head, with whatever backpack. I mean, the only thing you can't really change is you don't pivot at the waist on every
There's
guy.
a couple specific builds, but but otherwise they're fairly.
Yeah.
Look,
so,
and the
really
reality
good.
is, once you have them on the table and you're playing with them, you're not going to notice.
no. And I don't know. It was something I heard a lot of people complaining about how monopose everything new. If it's not a full push fit model, there's still a lot of modularity.
There's a
As
bit of-
I've been doing a whole lot of converting.
Head swaps, weapon swaps.
Yep.
So I did, and man, I want to talk about the Chaos Space Marines and go back a little bit to the Trader Guard that I finished, because I posted on the community group about drilling bolt holes, and I made what I thought was a funny post about using an X-Acto blade to
get
drill
your-
out bolt
Yeah,
holes.
I saw that.
And let me start with the serious air quotes part of that, and then get into the whoa, what happened there, folks? Let's take a second and look at this. So I was using the brand new X-Acto blade actually on the Trader Guardsmen to drill out their las gun and auto gun barrels. Finding a drill bit that's that fine and a pin vise that will hold a drill bit that fine and gives you that is hard to do. Like, you're going to be special ordering, and frankly, there aren't that many places that make drill bits that fine.
Yeah.
What I got tired of, frankly, was also that when you do that and you use a hand drill, and I even use a cordless screwdriver because it's lower torque and lower turn speed, or
doesn't
high
melt the
torque, lower
plastic.
turn speed, is depending on when the bit bites, it might misalign that.
Yep.
And then you get the
Then you rip open the
offset.
barrel.
yeah, and I was, because I do care what my models look like, even though I like min-max painting. I want maximum look out of minimum effort.
Yeah.
That I was really happy when I just one day, because I didn't want to go out in the garage and dig out the drill
got
bits and
lazy.
stuff. I got lazy and then stuck the tip of a brand new X-Acto blade in and turned it and was like, oh man, that worked. Awesome. And then I tried it on some of these Chaos Marines and their bolt guns, and I was like, that worked awesome too. And then I was like, man, I go through all this effort with these drill bits and this thing. And so for those who were like, here's what you should be using, maybe we could take a minute before responding to each other online to actually consider if the person, maybe just ask hey, did you know this? Yes. In my 30 years of hobbying, I knew I could use a drill and a pin vise. That was a thing I was aware of. Thank you for those who did that. Now, for those of you who are terrified that you are going to lose a hand and or eyeball, okay, if you're worried about that, yes, do not use an X-Acto blade to drill bolt holes. If you don't feel safe doing that, don't do it. But
It's not
why
the
are you
end all be all.
pushing?
Just be cautious. Yeah.
Why are you pushing that hard? It was my other thing of no, I'm not using any pressure. If the blade snaps, it's going to turn off inside But, I also know, Justin, you're incredibly well versed. You know what you're doing, and you had that scare with, it was an X-Acto blade bit. Mm-hmm. So, do appreciate those of you who are looking out for my well-being and concern. Maybe.
Well, you're a 40-year-old man. You got it.
Yeah. You know what? If that had happened, I would have been A, shocked, and B, that's on me for using that tool that way. But my God, does it work well? The punchline on the thing is it still works well. And you can drill any size hole you want with that thing.
You just twist it,
depending on how long you twist. Yeah. So
the only thing I found is that back to the drilling thing is I always start my holes with the hobby knife.
Yeah, that's what I do.
I'll start like a little pin and then I'll go to the pin vise. That seems to work pretty well for me. But I have noticed it it is easy. Not that bits are going to fly into your eye, but when you start using turning that X-Acto knife, the tip usually does break. Because
eventually it breaks.
Before I started using the pin vise, as a long time ago, it just. That would always happen. So
over time, eventually
better hobby blades or something. I don't know.
Well, no, and in time it will happen.
Drill bits break too. So.
Yeah, to your point though, you're making a post, which our community should all be about. Hey, this works for me, not you're doing your hobby wrong and
right.
And you're getting the results that you're trying to get from whatever method.
It was the number of people that it was the intensity of reaction that surprised me, especially since my initial post I thought was obviously somewhat comedic.
Yeah.
In that it was throw down your false idols, and then I got people being no.
Oh, don't worry, Jeff.
People get very passionate about the way they do things. I'm guilty of it myself. I'm absolutely guilty of it myself. And so, hey, share your thoughts and ideas.
That's all. Hashtag never drill.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Or never paint. Hashtag never paint.
If there's any wrong way to do something, it's that. And Jeff should be ashamed of himself for promoting it.
All right. Let me get back on track here. I also built, so there's more building. I built a Hellbrute, not the one piece guy, but a Hellbrute out of a whole kit.
Yeah.
And after building the one part from the Dark Vengeance kit, the mono or the imposable, what a disappointment that model was.
I'm not impressed. Yeah.
So I went to some lengths to pivot its foot, to turn its head, to elevate its torso a 1/16 of an inch, to build and it's still, man, what a static, stiff looking model.
Wait, I'm sorry, this is the dark.
This is the Chaos Hellbrute.
The current
one. Oh yeah, because he's
and,
pretty standing there straight up and down.
And it's actually not that old of a model.
No,
it's the real 4 years old.
It gives you options.
It does. The torso and the trunk, the dumpster barrel,
the dump trunk,
the upper chest area zone is really nice. It's the legs are just a half inch short. Yeah. It just, those legs.
And as I recall, it may or may not have a certain item hanging from its chest that kind of looks like a certain part of a male body.
There's two tubes that come out of the chest and they are dripping.
Yeah.
And where the drips hang those got cut off and filed down.
A little coin purse.
He does indeed. Yeah. And he doesn't pivot at the waist, so they are going right dead center. And I was glad I lifted him up.
I've never bought one because I looked at it and I'll just put this back on there.
Yeah, I think it'll paint up fine and it'll look okay when it's all done. I did him all close combat because why not? And then I spent way too much time building myself a warp smith because if you're going to do Iron Warriors, you're going to do.
Looks sick.
Yeah, dope.
Thank you. Was happy with that. I remembered why I don't do that many conversions is because back in my way backs, it used to be that whenever my buddy Anthony would convert, every model in his army was converted, but unless you knew what you were looking at, you couldn't tell anything was converted. That was always the goal, was make it look like a GW kit.
Yep.
But it's converted. So I always hold myself to that, attempting that standard of this looks totally normal, but it's obviously unique. Which means I spend way too long on these conversions. I could have been done with this thing weeks ago and wasn't. But I took the new Pharos Iron Hands Primaris Tech Marine duder. Mm-hmm. I hacked him up and I took parts from a Terminator Lord and leftover parts from the Hellbrute, which I was kind of proud of myself.
Was that head from the Hellbrute? I thought it was from the Havocs.
No, that was a Hellbrute head.
Rad.
That was the thing
that's cool.
leaped out at me.
And that's what actually started the whole thing as I saw on the Iron Warriors community group on Facebook, I saw somebody had done one of these conversions out of this model, and I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, yep.
But then I was working on this Hellbrute and saw you get like 6 heads to choose from.
Interesting.
And I was like, man, since one of the things I'm doing with my Iron Warriors is I want them to be the like techno-organic thing, like the flesh is weak, so I want it to show like the corrupted flesh on them. Yep. So actually including flayed skins and things, but then anytime their flesh is showing under the armor, it's got biomechanics mixed in with it so that it's not, there's no flesh, it's that it's
a little nanotech going on.
Yeah, it's been mutated. The obliterators are supposed to be a big part of them. Anyway, so lots and lots of work on him. Got to use that Green Stuff World brass etch as a little final piece, which
are nice.
Really was, a key piece that I ended up back and forthing on. And
what
feeling
kind
dumb 'cause I
of brass
forgot.
etch was that? Was it like Iron Warriors?
They're just chaos symbols.
Okay.
You get, I think there's 6 different chaos stars, and then there's one symbol for each of the 4 gods. So there's different styles of stars and different sizes, but I mean, these are all teeny.
They're very tiny. Like they're
tiny.
They're for Primaris Marine size, Chaos Marine size.
Gotcha.
If you look at the picture that I posted on the community group of this Warpsmith conversion, it's literally, it fits in the flat bolt on his chest. It just fits inside of that.
Oh, wow.
So he's got a
I
chaos
missed
star
that
right
on the picture you
smack
took.
in his chest. It wasn't there when I took that picture.
Oh,
because I
gotcha.
was still hemming and hawing for an extra 3 days on
Gotcha.
nonsense details.
Models like that, though, like your characters for your army, like even though in the moment you might be like, I bit off more than I can chew, getting this guy looking crazy. Like it always ends up being so worth it,
Yeah, I even, I didn't include this. I even built him on his base, which Uncle Adam, interesting, of Tabletop Minions, just did a video about always build your guys on their bases.
Ciao.
Pachow. And I actually never do that. And one of the other things I've built in paint is I built and painted, a dozen or so of the Sector Imperial spaces, but I'm using kind of something Brian Harvey's real big on is that he will take those bases and use them as a palette to build from them, and then like build up his own look on top of the pre-made bases, which is something I really like doing, of taking a resin base or taking a pre-sculpted base and then adding your own embellishment so that they're still your own, and using that as like a pre-built canvas, which if you're out there going, then why are you buying already made bases? Hey, you do you, man. You enjoy your hobby your way.
You're gonna still have details. That,
Stop yelling at me about my hobby knife.
But no, I had to add skulls. Funny enough, on a GW product, I had to add skulls. But Chaos Marine's got to have dem skulls.
Yeah, I'm almost out of my skull pack. I need to buy another one of those things.
Did you feel I mine too? And I was like, kind of proud of me.
Yeah.
Like, way to go me. I used up an entire pack of skulls.
It's almost as impressive as using an entire tube of super glue.
Without it getting all gummy.
Gooped.
It's almost as impressive as drilling a bolter without the hobby knife blade breaking.
I used a pin vise and it was dead center. All right, you wanted to yell at me about Black Legion.
Let's talk Black Legion.
Yep.
So the reason I'm curious about this is you have a very high standard, as we just talked about, for novels. You did read Talon of Horus and enjoyed it more than you had expected to. What did you think of the follow-up, Black Legion?
It's a good series. There are some things that Aaron Dembski Bowden does really, really well as a writer. That he has his ability to develop a character, to have a clear sense of motive for the character, which is, when I am teaching about fiction, is one of the go-to points I teach my students to look for, is when you're trying to figure out what's the point of this book, when you're reading something that gets, canonized as quote unquote literature, which is not a debate I want to have with anybody about what is or isn't literature. You do you. But when you are looking through that lens and you're trying to quantify that thing, one of the things we look for is, like, what's this book about? Is it about something, or is it just entertaining? And there's nothing wrong with being just entertaining. I like Marvel movies.
Storm Iron.
Just entertaining, right? Like I said, I like Dark Imperium, and it was really just entertainment, aggressively. And there are some things Aaron Dembski Bowden does that starts leaning into that. There's a point to this, that he's saying something. He doesn't get there. It's still just entertaining, but that motive piece is really beautifully handled. It's clear he has put thought into, how would this character act? Why would they act that way? What is it they're representing?
I know for a fact, like, he racks himself over this stuff.
Right. And it's impressive that he does it with Space Marines.
Not easy to do, I think.
Not easy to do. I think he did a nice job with Abaddon, in that character is bigger than life. And in Black Legion, he's such an essential part of the book that writing about a character like that is an unattainable task. It's not something that really could be done.
Yeah.
But the lens of the main character, who I'm totally blanking his name,
Iskender.
Yeah.
Iskender.
Yep.
The lens is so established for that character that we're able to use that perception, and Iskender's kind of misperception of things or his own arrogance.
Yep.
Allows us to kind of see Abaddon through that lens, which works really, really well. I think it's good writing.
Yeah.
Without going too far down the rabbit hole of where are the problems and where does it fall apart.
Yeah.
For me, like, and there were points where, much like their fleet going through the Great Rift get out in Cadia, it starts getting real shaky.
There were parts where I was like, where is this going? Right, in that book. And that's about the point where I was like, where is this going? But then kind of the wrap up of that piece, it's all done to demonstrate somebody's conviction about something. And then I felt like, oh, I see. This is all a setup for this scene to happen. And I'll talk about that offline. So we don't.
Yeah, there's for those. I mean, it's.
I don't want to
spoil
see
it
me because
there was a very pregnant, thoughtful pause on my face. There of like,
those.
Is it though?
Those two books are my favorite books in Black Library. So.
They're totally enjoyable. I would say they are significantly better than many of the other books I've read. What was the Spear of the Emperor? Is that what it's called? Spears of the Emperor. It was interesting to think back on that because I've read that as well, or listened to that. All these I've listened to, which I think is a different experience. So I've listened to all these, and I think it was interesting to look back and think about like him as a writer.
You got to do Night Lords.
And what are his moves? And
I have to jump into those too.
Have you not done Night? Oh my God, what is the matter with you?
Because I'm afraid of starting a new army. Carl.
That honestly, thankfully, the Night Lords are just a big enough pain in the butt to paint that I'm pretty sure
Shell wanted. It's Shell's favorite Legion after those books.
Nice. All right.
Yeah. So I mean, I give ADB the fist bump of like, clearly the guy has control of what he does. He knows what he does well.
Yeah.
And for just being fun novels,
you enjoyed it. Yeah.
It's enjoyable and they're well written. Like there is anybody who's like, oh, they're crappy. No, they're not crappy writing. Like it might not be your cup of tea.
There's talent there though.
But beyond talent, there's craft.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Yeah. And I am a stickler on like talent and craft are very different things. And he clearly has control of his craft. He knows what he's doing and why he's making moves he's making.
I think it's interesting because he's so meticulous about it. I mean, this is why he's a slower writer, right? He's so meticulous about it. He could probably hammer out a dozen books in the time that he writes these, but they wouldn't be his books. They wouldn't.
You can't rush greatness.
No.
No. I mean,
that's ADB.
That practice shows, man. I mean, you put in that time. Now, is there a third Black Legion book? Is on the way? I've heard.
We'll see.
Okay, God. I would be genuinely excited if that were to come to pass. That would be really, really neat.
I think it's coming.
I want to go back and re-listen to those books too, because I was like a hobby fervor when I was listening to them, and wasn't paying as much attention as I should have been. And I dug them, but I want to go back and just really num them.
The voice acting is
so good,
really good. Like I got done listening to them, and I couldn't help but go, I wonder if he picked this reader because that reader is so perfect.
I don't know how it was picked.
And I'm embarrassed actually that I don't have the gentleman who read its name because he does such a nice job with Iskandar. And Fire Fist is the homie, man. I love that guy. That was a world eater after my own heart right there. Loved that dude. And
the crazy thing is like Aaron will introduce like a character like there's a scene where I want to say like Kaon like walks in. It's actually Cain, I think, is actually how it's supposed to be pronounced, like Cain and Abel. Huh. So, even though it's spelled K, it's like K-A-Y-O-N
I think it's Cain.
Or something. I think it's Cain. Yeah. He like walks in and like Abaddon is there and he's like holding court and he has like all of these guys around and like he goes through and describes like each of the guys and like the one guy who can't talk, but he has like the pauldrons that have the demon heads on him that talk for him, and I'm like, I want to know more about that guy. It's just a passing reference, and then he moves on to the next guy. I'm like,
go back to him.
oh my god, if I had to kit bash all this stuff, it's crazy.
Man, if there's a model that's due for getting a model as a champion of chaos, my goodness, how none of those Black Legion models have gotten a nudge.
Well,
they came out with that new sorcerer with some
he was
work.
good.
You could,
He was good. Yeah. All right. Anyway, Justin, we're running along in the tooth.
Yep. Speaking of awesome voice
your
actors, I finished The Buried Dagger, and man,
another novel that people love or hate. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved it.
Really enjoyed it as well.
Yep. Good voice acting in it too.
Like, oh, dude, right? The Nurgle stuff, like, yeah. No spoilers, but yeah, voice acting. That dude has Nurgle down.
Yeah, it's gotta hurt his throat.
Oh, big time. Yeah. No, really enjoyed it, and it definitely is one of those books that just gives you so much little nuggets of like, oh, that's why the Death Guard are how they are now, and little things like that's why they have Plague Burst crawlers, and that's why they. Very good book. If you're into Death Guard, definitely read that book. I also finished Manflayer finally, which I enjoyed. It got a little name heavy for me.
I haven't read it.
Where it was like, okay, who is this person again?
Oh, gotcha.
I'm like, it got Game of Thronesy.
Yeah, okay.
Where I'm literally like lost in points, and I'm like, okay, I think that's some like,
I think that's
some half demon, half Dark Eldar thing. But all in all, like a lot of cool moments in that book, especially when all the parts with Fulgrim happen. Like no spoiler alerts, but. Yeah, I'm ready for Emperor's Children. Now, of course, these two books I just finished have no influence on the show at all. Not at all. But definitely good books and worth reading, I found. As far as hobby goes, I was able to get 9 more Plague Marines. I'm very sorry, Harlequins. I will eventually get back to you. And it occurred to me why I think I needed a break from Harlequins is I put them in my IKEA cabinet that's like right next to my little hobby area. Mm-hmm. And they're right below my Ideneth Deepkin that I painted. And they're basically like tonally, color-wise, the same thing.
Oh, yep, that'll do.
So you're like, I need a break from this.
Because I mean, it wasn't even the diamonds that were like, I need a break from. I just needed a break from that color scheme. Like it hit me. I'm like, good God, like this is the same. I literally painted the same army twice in a row.
Yeah. It makes sense.
One is under the sea and one is in the webway. So. Nice. Like no regrets, man. I've been totally focused on the Death Guard, and playing with them in 9th edition has been, as we'll get to in games played, just like a total blast. And then of course Games Workshop comes out and says they're getting 2 wounds soon. All the Marines are getting 2 wounds, and Blight Lords are getting 3 wounds. So just all those things combined. But anyways, I got 9 more Plague Marines painted up to battle ready, beyond battle ready standard, to the point where I was literally like pinning them into their bases when Chris showed up for a game. I'm like, I'm sorry, dude. I just, I'm working. But I got them ready for the game. I stumbled upon like 9 or 10 of these resin bases that I had in my little base organizer that I completely forgot I had. And they're basically like urban rubble bases that have like these kind of like rivers running through them.
Cool.
And I looked at them like deep cut kind of channels, right?
Sure.
And I looked at it. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. So I painted those up real quick, and then I glooped a bunch of different paints of green, nasty, toxic waste colors into them, as you do. And then I'll drop some little water effects over it. But it just really complemented the model so well. So I got those bases done. Those guys are looking fresh. And what else did I do? I assembled 2 Myphetic Blight Haulers. Those are like the little trilobe.
Yep.
I am well aware Brian is a huge fan, and I've fought them many times. They're actually, I think, wonderfully effective on the tabletop. They do something that I think is just really fun, and that they're dreadnoughts basically.
They're fast. They have so much going for them. I could just stop me. I'm gonna stop. The problem I found though is like with my current Death Guard build, I've been struggling to find points for them. Mm-hmm. Like it's just hard to fit them in. I'm gonna try them out. The other problem too is like it's a easy to build kit. Mm-hmm. So it's like monopose. Once I get to them, I'm going to have to sculpt a bunch of crap onto them just to differentiate them and all that. But anyhow, I got 2 of those guys built. I assembled 10 more Plague Marines. So I'm now officially up to 26.
And you say some of the Japanese Plague Marines, the ones from the Heroes set that you could buy, right?
Yep. Yeah, these are the ones that are.
How do they scale compared to the others?
Oh, they're perfectly scaled.
I thought for some reason I kept thinking they were different scale, but I'm really glad they aren't.
Same scale. And really, the cool thing is every single model comes with 2 different heads.
Oh, interesting.
So like, yay, bits.
So not only that, you got heads for other.
Which I incorporated
heads.
into. I think I only assembled 2 of the guys like kind of stock. I did the plague flail guy.
Yeah.
And there's a guy that's got like a leg up and he's hucking a grenade.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was like, that guy just needs to go together as is. He's rad. But then I took some of the heads from those guys and sprinkled them in.
That's awesome.
To the other unit. And then you get a malignant plague caster too in there. And he's
Nice.
way better than Mr. Babyface. All in all, just a really cool set of models. Took forever to arrive, but really cool.
Where'd you
sculpts.
end up buying them from?
Just online through
Oh,
eBay.
okay. So like eBay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. They're hard to find.
Yeah. We have a friend that frequently goes to Japan or was.
Oh,
going
that's good to
Japan,
know.
But now he can't.
That's good to know. That could have saved me some money.
Nope, because he couldn't go.
Oh, well, when he goes, if he goes,
Sometime
when the
in the
world is
future.
done ending,
In the after
then
time.
I might be able to save some money.
I think it's John Campos goes down there.
Gotcha. And then last but not least, a couple things. I reset the pallet.
Yep.
I had to clean the work area. It was getting a little heavy.
Yeah, I feel you.
In the slaughter studio, so I had to reset that thing. Oh God, isn't it amazing how that just feels good?
Yeah, it's
Like every
great.
time.
Yeah, it's just breath of fresh air.
You got to do it. And then, of course, I had a couple hours to kill before coming over to record, and I was looking at that Fabius Bile box, and I had to start building him. He's about 80% assembled,
Nice.
and we'll get to the details on that sculpt.
I picked up one of those for funsies' sake. When I saw your distraction from a distraction,
Yeah.
like I bought him with that express purpose. Funny enough, and we'll talk about it more later, I had picked up about 6-8 months ago. I picked up the original sculpt for that reason.
Nice.
And then they released this new one, and I was like,
Right.
well, okay, let me get that one too.
He'll be a champion for a unit, converted up.
I got plans.
Down the
I
road.
got
Yeah,
plans.
you got plans. Good.
Cool.
But yeah, lots of Death Guard, man. I'm excited. Nurgle, baby. Nurgle.
So hobby goals and promises, I already said. I'm just going to keep assembling sister stuff since that's kind of the only thing I can really get to at the moment. So I'll just stick with that.
Nice.
What are you going to do, Jody?
I'm going to start painting. I've done that build fest, got the primer on. I'm going to start really painting in earnest to get up to that Crusade force. I'm kind of there, but there's some funny enough, I need more Chaos Marines in my Chaos Marine army. So that's what's up next.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm
great
my second
problem.
squad of just stock Chaos Marine boys is up, and then I got a Hellbrute number 3 to build that'll be inspired by your Hellbrute that you've run with the Las missile
My
combo.
Zinch one.
Yeah,
I have that old Forge World one.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's a beauty. But I'm gonna I'll build up one of
You
this
know what?
other one.
When I was packing everything, I dropped him and he shattered. I had to glue them all back together. Fortunately, he just broke where the glue was.
There you go.
So
There you go. Yep. So Hellbrute number 3 will be my
Nice.
change of pace. He actually just showed up.
3 brutes.
I'm doing
brutal.
demon engines. I want demon, even though
that's
Hellbrutes are
brutal.
not demon.
Nice.
Brutish.
you see what you did.
I missed it. That's beautiful. That's well done. But yeah, I want the techno organic like demon engine thing. Even though it kills me that Hellbrutes are not demon engines, why are they not demon
And
engines?
you did paint obliterators already, right?
I've got
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
the start
starter
collecting
ones.
out of Shadow Spear.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
so I've got the Venom Crawler. I've got the
You're almost
Blitz.
there, man. I'm
Yeah, I
excited.
have. Technically I have a Crusade force I could run, but
Nice.
We'll have to get some Iron Warrior on Nurgle.
into it.
Yep.
Justin, what's up for you?
I'm honestly like zero regrets. I put my Harlequins in my cabinet.
You'll get back to him.
I'll get back to them. I'm just all about the Death Guard right now. As we'll go into in games played, I'm super stoked on them, and I'm just going to try to focus on finishing those Plague Marines. Mainly the 10-man unit, because I have 2 7-man units that are going in Rhinos. But the 10-man unit I really want to get done because Eric Carpenter is going to be sending me one of them Terrax drills. Like I'm going to buy that thing off him because he's been sitting on it forever. I'm like, dude, I'm going to buy one, and they're sold out from Forge World. I'd rather give you the money because 10 Plague Marines jumping out of a drill, all of them tossing grenades.
Seems
and
right.
Mortal wounding anything to death. Sounds fun. So, but yeah, the 10 Plague Marines, they're basically all bolt gun armed. I kept the unit super cheap, all bolt guns and 1 Plague Flail. So they're all just literally there to jump out, toss grenades, and cause havoc. So I'll be focusing on that. And that'll keep me busy.
All right. All right, let's moving on to games played real quick. I've just been primarily doing RPG stuff. That's kind of all we can, for the most part, get to here.
Those pictures are great. I will add to that.
Are silly.
You guys set a high bar, man. It's rough.
Silly.
It's rough.
So we've been, the point Justin's talking about is we've been playing Call of Cthulhu, of which Jody is a part of that group. So it's Jody, Josh, myself, Doug, and Travis. And the first thing was Doug is playing a German guy in 1920s, and he shows up with a hat and mustache and goatee, and so then next thing you know,
that wasn't a filter. That was an actual.
Oh no,
it's
he's
real,
actually
it's
wearing that.
actual.
And so we all thought
Well done.
he was
Well
just doing
done.
it to be silly, and we all think it's silly, and that's cool. And then
role playing.
next thing you know, Travis shows up dressed up as his character in the 1920s, so he takes it up a notch, and we're like, okay. Next thing you know, I'm doing like Spirit Halloween store orders.
Oh no! Meanwhile,
then-
Jody's over here just like,
Well, then
I
we
don't
went
know
to-
these guys hobbying.
Well, then we kind of did a side thing where we're in Constantinople in like the siege of Constantinople, and so I knew it. Travis showed up dressed up as a knight.
So did Doug.
I showed up dressed up as a knight. Doug shows up dressed up as, and I do costume changes because we've got different characters. It's so silly.
God.
and Aaliyah
It's really been funny.
So my wife pops her head in and is like, I'm like, babe, you got to come see this. She pops her head in and she looks at, she's like, and she hits me and she's like, why aren't you in costume? Go get in the costume box. I'm like, come on, man.
Costume box, eh?
Jeez, Louise.
It has been really silly and
It's been
really
fun.
fun. But the best story I heard was, I can't mention that one on air. I'll tell you guys off. Okay. Sorry, guys. Anyway, it's been fun.
Icy's Unbound.
There it is.
That's right. So yeah, primarily RPGs for me at the moment. I'm really looking to get some ninth games in,
Yeah, for sure, man.
I've only done
gotta toss
one.
some bones.
There it is.
which Jody's going to talk about next.
Hey,
And
well,
I
you
kinda
already
talked about.
Yeah, you already talked about it. So we got our Orcs versus Thousand Sons. I also had played a game versus Matt versus his Death Watch. Death Watch cannot get that new Marine book soon enough. Man, he and I have probably played a half a dozen games with that Death Watch force.
And he struggles every time.
It's been one way or the other. It's either been the game's over by mid turn 3, if maybe turn 2, one way or the other. It's one of us is, which isn't fun. That's just not an enjoyable way to play.
No.
So I cannot wait for those guys to get a new book. This was unfortunately a bad day for the Death Watch when he and I played. It was the Orcs had some vehicles at a low power level, and these guys are terrible at power level. Hopefully a little better with the new book.
Yeah, and these were with the updated power level?
No,
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 it's
this
old
predates
stuff,
that. And man, it was not much of a game.
Let's see what happens with the new book.
Yeah, I'm ready for that. They need it. But we did get in some games of Space Hulk. Continues to just be a
great
hoot.
game.
I mentioned I painted up those doors. It's so good and
So
man,
bummed you didn't get to
poor Marines.
go to Adepticon and play in the.
I did last year.
Oh, that's right. You went last year.
Yeah.
It was Josh that hadn't gone. And he was
right.
gonna go.
That was what inspired this whole
the
like
best.
digging out my old First Ed set and getting the guys painted up.
So
and
good.
I've never played a full game of that, man. I really want to try it out. 'cause
yeah.
people
Wow,
always-
really?
It's like Hero Quest for 40K.
Oh,
You know,
it's
people
so
always-
good, dude.
Like
It-
I
it-
bought the last set, not the first edition, but
Yeah,
the second edition one. But I've never played
It's
a
so
full
good.
game. Yeah,
Matt and I laugh every time about, there's so much talk online about balance
Yeah.
and how wildly imbalanced that game is. It's not even close. Like the Marines are at such a
Oh,
disadvantage.
it's not supposed to be.
No, and it's not. And everybody loves it. And it's just,
Which is why you're supposed to like play.
Yep, and
and
then
then
flip.
switch sides.
Yep.
Yeah.
and it's both people seeing if you can get the Marines to win.
Yeah. Totally.
Matt got off to a really good start in this one. We thought he was going to pull it off, but nope. But then I've also been doing the role playing thing. There's this game Blitz Bowl I'm really into. It's getting a new season coming out.
That's
Very
exciting.
excited about that. And been playing Rangers of Shadow Deep, which I know seems totally unrelated. Rangers of Shadow Deep is like a role playing tabletop skirmish game. It's co-op, but you've got models on a table and you're fighting out battles. And for that is kind of related that I didn't touch on in my build is I made some rivers, like did the pouring resin and crafted.
I
on
thought you had
MDF
made those
and-
for 40K. They're fantastic looking.
They'd go either way.
Either way,
Like they'd
yeah.
use for whatever. Unfortunately, due to learning, I was made 4 feet of river. I am down to 3 feet of river. The first foot of river was sacrificed to the learning gods.
So you don't even have a river that can go across a 4-foot table.
But luckily, the tables aren't 4 feet anymore. So
40,
Some
44,
aren't.
man.
But
do you
there's-
have 44 inches?
Some aren't.
No.
So nope, I don't. So anyway, though, there's about a million things I do differently, but I'll post pictures of some of the things that went right. Used a lot of Luke APS and Black Magic Craft online crafting videos. There's a lot of great points about what to do. There are some really great things about pouring clear resin and some really frustrating things about pouring clear resin. But I'll put a post up in the community about that. Justin, you actually played actual games.
Two of them.
About games played.
2 of them.
And I got to come over and see Chris for a bit. That was nice.
Yep. You came over, during the first game, which was 1,500 points against Biff Tinkerer's Believers, his Blood Axe Orc shenanigan army. And that game was really interesting, bloody as always. But it was one of those games where I was like, turn 2 at the end of it, I was like, man, I got this. Like I felt I was feeling bad, I'm like, what's he gonna do from this point on? And then like turn 3 was like,
that's what he's gonna do.
I'm in trouble. And especially like, a couple things happened that game. Like we didn't really take as much time as we should have to go over terrain, which we definitely rectified in our next game. And it wasn't like a huge situation, but just one of those things in the new 40K guys, like you have to take the time to go over every terrain piece. Even if you say, hey, look, every terrain piece on this table counts as a ruin and we're going to keep it simple, just have that conversation. And it wasn't like we got into an argument and it was like, table flipping or anything, but just have that conversation. It could be the difference between Terminators getting a 1+ save or a 2+ save. These things matter. And, but it was just a really amazing example of, because Chris used to play a lot of War Machine, and I kind of saw his like War Machine brain come out in this game. Where it was like, he took his
kill the caster. Oh wait,
like he didn't get lost in the think tank, but like he definitely took his time, stared at the table. I gave him his minute, and it was kind of like watching a chess player, like every single little psychic power and unit that moved. And then it all worked out. And his Orc War Boss, oh my God, he's got that Psychic Awakening stratagem that turns him into like a little mini Gazgul.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. With like a Strength 14 Power Claw, with flat 3 damage and yada, yada, yada. So he charges into 5 Blightlord Terminators. I'll go over this one highlight of the game. He charges into 5 Blightlord Terminators. We had this epic battle like over the steps of this ruin going on. He charges in, and I'm like, ha ha ha! I've got my
very confident in your Blightlord.
Yeah, I've got the flamethrower guy, the stinky boy that makes you attack last. I can't think of his name. So I'm like, okay, I swing first, and I burned like 3 stratagems on the Terminators. Like, ha ha, killed them. Cool. What's next? Okay, I'm going to burn 2 command points. He attacks after he dies.
Yeah.
Like, oh no. Wipe the Terminators.
Wow.
5 Blightlord
One guy
Terminators.
wiped 5 Blightlord
His HQ,
Terminators.
just wiped him. Because he's got like 7 or 8 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. They're death skulls, so like rerolling 1 attack to hit, rerolling 1 to wound, just rerolling everything, and strength 14 flat 3 damage.
2s to hit, 2s to wound. It's good.
They're in Cataphracti armor.
With rerolls.
They're in Cataphracti, so they got a 4-up invul. So naturally, I roll a bunch of 1s, 2s, and 3s, and it just wipes them. Just
awesome.
Done. Yeah. So an epic game, and it went from like turn 2/3. I was like, this is mine. To good game, dude. Good game. So he took that one. Now in that game too, I took the 20-man Plague Marine unit.
Yeah.
Which
really benefits though from the new morale rules.
I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say it benefits from it, but
it does, because the old morale stuff, regardless, like, I felt like
compared to the old rules,
like the 8th
it isn't as bad.
Right.
I wouldn't say it benefits, but it's not nearly. Yeah, I guess that's a benefit.
Well, so what I'm saying is, like, I would never conceive to take a 20-man Chaos Space Marine unit, even though you can, because I would be like, yeah, but they're gonna lose 10 guys in combat, and then I'm going to fail by this much. I'm just going to lose another half of those. And now it's like, oh, wait a minute. I have more of a chance of them sticking around a little bit. I actually really like the new.
And I've seen a bunch of guys on the Death Guard Facebook page that they swear by it, but I wanted to switch it up because it's a new edition. I'm trying new things.
Try new stuff.
So I instead broke that up into like 2 7-man units.
Okay.
Stuck them into rhinos.
By the way, very fluffy of you.
Right. Got to be 7.
Well done.
Stuck them in rhinos, and rules wise too, it helps them just armament wise, Anyways, I was like, dude, I need to jump on these objectives faster, because in that game, I would like shamble on with like some pox walkers, and he would wipe them out and take that objective, and then over here, my Terminators, they got wiped. So in this next game, this was 1750.
Okay,
and I split,
so it's up 250 points.
Up 250, yeah. And our next game we're going to do is going to be 2K. So we're doing like a little escalation.
All right.
So I put those into rhinos, and then I won the roll for first turn initially because we had 5 objectives. This was actually playing the grand tournament rules that came out with chapter approved. We had 5 objectives on the field, and initially I'm like, okay, an objective mission. I kind of want to go second. I looked at the armies and I said, okay, no, I'm gonna go first. I pumped those rhinos onto the objectives, pop smoke, kind of pushed the middle, reinforced it, and in 40K 9th edition, like it's all about you have to jump on those objectives fast because you score and
you're gonna ramp up points.
Yeah, you score in your command phase, right? So it does no good.
That was my problem against Jody. Like,
right.
I couldn't get you off. Like I was doing a lot of damage, but you had ramped up points.
Yeah, the table control aspect of 9th.
I actually really like it.
Yes,
it forces you into that battle.
Yes,
right. More dynamic.
Yeah,
especially with a smaller table and like just. It's so good. But I really played to the objectives that game. He made a few little mistakes during deployment, which we talked about after the game. But I ended up kind of carrying it at the end.
Yeah.
Bloody, brutal, fun game that we played until like 3 a.m.
Oh,
you
nice.
My wife came out and was like, you guys are crazy. And we're like, why?
It's 3 in the morning.
It's 3 a.m.
That's why.
But we finished all 5 turns and ended up being like 67 to like 40 something. It wasn't like a total blowout.
Yeah. And a lot of times that is closer than it sounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I had 1 model left alive at the end of
Holy
the game.
cow.
I had 1 model. I had my little grenade biologist putrefier buffer guy, just like, where did everybody go? And he had his flyer and he had his truck, and he probably only had about 15 models left.
Yeah.
It turns out those battle wagons with those def rollers,
not too shabby.
Do work.
They do work. I'm gonna kill that thing next time.
Yeah, so I'm gonna run those guys over.
Yeah,
I'm gonna run that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna run over your dreadnought.
And of course, he was doing the beep, beep, beep.
Yeah,
but a great game, and man,
maybe that's what hit the astronomical.
3d6 charge. You gotta like it.
That thing would have been on the other side of your house. You would have had no house left, dude.
Ford F-250. Def roller.
12 attacks, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s.
Oh god,
flat like neg 3 for
like I said, we want to get the kitchen remodeled. Had he gone through and
well, he's painting that thing up. We'll have him bring it over and just
smash it on the side of my house. All right, well, listen, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and then we're going to actually launch into the actual topic of our show. So we'll be right back. All right, and we're back, and we are launching into our Champions of 40K, the Powers of Chaos.
For chaos.
You know what? Let's have Justin go first.
Because good is dumb. That's
all right.
why we're
so
here.
what we're going to do is we're each going to cycle through. This is our first round picks. We have 2 picks over the course of the show. This segment of the show, we'll go over our first round picks, and we'll dive deep into why we like this particular character and what it does for us,
and the model,
everything
and the
about
rules, and everything about these cool guys.
So, Justin, let's start with you. Who could you possibly have picked for round 1?
Not at all based on, my love of horror and Dark Eldar and torture and
no,
all that thing. Opportunity, ability, and will. With these 3 things, I shall break the fetters of mortality. With these 3 things, I shall master the secrets of life and death. With these 3 things, I shall become a god. Fabius Bile, the Primogenitor, Clone Lord, Manflayer. I had to do it. After reading Manflayer and I just had to do it.
I'm so glad you did, because this was on my top selection. So
what about appeals to you?
So he's basically like you take Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty.
I love that you went that way.
Meets Dr. Satan with a combination of Dr. Frankenstein. He's ancient. He's been around a very, very long time, and he's just creepy. He's done everything from cloning himself, which I very much Rick and Morty, right? Like,
right.
He's got tons of himself around. To kill him, sure, his brain will get implanted into another clone, and he's good. He's cloned Primarchs, like Horus and Fulgrim. Part of his plan is to clone the Emperor, but without any kind of morals, just that powerful of a being. He's responsible for the Emperor's children being as twisted as they are. God bless his 2 twisted hearts. Laying waste, occasional genocides, he's guilty of that, but always to further his experiments. Because the interesting thing about him too is like he's not just like this mustache twirling, like I will kill all of humanity, like he's trying to kind of create life in a way. Like he's all about, as weird as it is from a guy who has no problems with killing an entire planet's population to make a vial of something that he inserts in his brain to make him, better. He is actually kind of good in a way. Like he's trying to make like this ultimate human being, and he's just a very complex character, and he's been there since the beginning, and he's kind of always one step ahead of the opposition. Just a really cool character.
All right. Resonates with you.
It really resonates with me.
Yeah, I can see that. Jody, what about you? Who have you chosen for your first round pick?
I did not go complex at all. I also did not go with Lucius the Eternal. And I just want to disclaim this. I started to, and then actually was intimidated by him.
He's kind of complex. I was going to pick him too, man.
Once I started flaying back the layers of this character, that I realized people love this character, and I have not read the myriad novels he has appeared in, and I know there is a legacy with him, and I want to do that justice, and that was just not going to happen this time. So I instead went pretty aggressively the opposite direction and went shamelessly with the Cult of the New. Before every doom, there is a portent. Before every apocalypse, there is a sign. The Raptor Chaos Lord, Harken, World Claimer of the Black Legion. So who is this guy? Harken is the mouthpiece and the herald of Abaddon, the Abaddon the Despoiler. The mantra of him is he is there to sow discord, fear, and distrust in a society to make it ripe for the plucking for the Despoiler. A little bit of background on him.
Didn't he start like the
Vigilus?
Vigilus.
That's where he showed up.
He's like the first one on the planet, right?
Or something like that, right?
Yeah, he's got the Hell Spear, and once he plants it, it's claimed. Harken World Claimer is a scholar and a collector of dark knowledge, as well as a leader of men. He knows the power of words well chosen. He studied the Grimoire Nostromo, the vilest of treatises written in the king's blood by the Primarch Conrad Cruz of the Night Lords. He's unearthed the clotted scrolls, learning well of the growled threats of Angron before he was consumed by those berserk rages. And he's delved into the book of Magnus, though it cost him a good part of his sanity to do so. In his studies, he's learned much. When he delivers his fell message, broadcast from his own laud-hailer, not only from his own laud-hailer, but through the Vokgrills and the cankerous throats of 1,000 acolytes, the raw and gloating hatred that drips from each syllable can shatter cohesion, cause mass surrenders, and even drive men to suicide. That's why I like him.
Fair enough.
The funny truth, though, was like, so I'm working on this new Iron Warrior army, and I'm like, man, I kind of want to see Raptors get used. They're kind of cool. They're like a shock troop. The Iron Warriors are going to be in like shock
and
troops.
their models are pretty sick.
Their models are cool. Man, I wish there was somebody cool that went with them. Oh man, there was that guy in Vigilus. He's kind of cool. Man, wouldn't it be cool to have Harken leading a Raptors army and like this all out of, that would be kind of cool. That was cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, here we are with the Cult of the New, and man, this new guy's kind of cool. So and once I got into him, actually, as I just read through that, I realized, so it's somebody who really, really puts value in the power of words. And I was like, I can't see why that would resonate with me.
I can't see why that works for you.
At any level.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's Harken World Claimer did a deep as of a dive as you can do in a very shallow pool of information.
Well, for me, all of these episodes, I have up till now chosen kind of obscure individuals or
Forge World
related, things or things.
I was
that
real
weren't
proud of you
really,
when I saw your choices.
Really
man.
kind of, and finally, we come to the second time we've done the Powers of Chaos show, and I had to go with probably my favorite Chaos character, Azik Aramon.
Shocking.
Chief Librarian of the Thousand Sons, now the Arch Sorcerer of Tzeentch. The thing is, he's got this story of hubris and this fall from grace. He's ruthless. He's complicated. He's a haunted individual who struggles with his own failures but doesn't learn from them. Nope. And this is exactly the kind of thing I like about Chaos Sorcerers. Like I've said from the get-go, one of the reasons I liked Thousand Sons and even even like when I do my Black Legion army is I love the idea of like these corrupted chaos space magic guys, you know, and it's and that word sorcerer has a lot of weight to me. And so I just love the fact that here he is, like one of the most powerful sorcerers in the galaxy. And as we get into rules, we'll talk a little bit about how that's represented. But you know, as I said, he's the arch sorcerer of Tzeentch. He's incredibly powerful. He's full of himself. He's the dabbler in arcane lore and forbidden knowledge. I love that his background is full and rich and complex. There have been many books written about him, most by John French, whom I love his writing, and he's, aside from being a wonderful chap, and you know, he's a character that for me represents so much about 40K and about chaos in 40K and about he's not just he is a bit of a mustache twirling kind of villain, but he has an objective.
Tragedy to him too, though.
Oh, for sure.
A lot of tragedy. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I dig is that, you know, at this stage of his existence, he's really going after the Aldari because he thinks they have the knowledge that he needs to undo the mistakes that he made, not recognizing that really he's probably just bound to recreate those mistakes.
I mean, like we spoke about on the last episode, right, with Ivrain, undoing what he did,
and in
like,
particular,
he knows it can be done.
That gets mentioned elsewhere too, that he witnessed this, so he knows it can be done, and so that almost doubles his reinforcement of his belief that he must get access to the Black Library and et cetera, et cetera. So I think he's a cool character. I think he's driven. I think he's got sorceress fetishes and things that I dig. And yeah, everything about this guy I love.
Sorceress fetishes. All
like
right.
on his...
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Well, and...
I was going to say, let's not sell the guy short. Chaos holds all possibilities.
That's right. So let's talk about... why don't we go into the models? And again, and Justin, what is it... Like, talk about this hero's model and you know, what is it about it?
Maybe a rating?
What versions
1 to
are
10?
there? Yeah, if you want. Yeah, that's up to you. Yeah.
Me?
Yeah. You?
Me. The first edition model is, I'm just going to say JG from now on, you know, for those of you at home playing independent characters, drinking games.
Bingo.
The original was, it was cool. It was good for the time.
Yeah.
That model was from like 93 or something. Still a good, I actually own 2 of them somehow. I think my buddy Dave gave me one somewhere along the lines. And I will absolutely turn that guy into something.
Yeah.
A champion or something, right? The new model, well, he is very much like Games Workshop has been doing a phenomenal job with Ahriman and Karn of just like really keeping that aesthetic the same yet updated and beefier and just not...
It's more elegant,
more motion. The new model is really, really well done. Like I said earlier, I got that model about 80% assembled. Just the way these things go together, like you said,
it's insane.
It's literally insane the way they cut these things. He's phenomenal. He's beefy. He comes with an acolyte that's like ripping the gene seed out of a Marine that's on the ground, you know, and like just the sculpt of Fabius, I think it's spot on. Like it's so well done. I wasn't a big fan of how big his nose was. And I saw like even Richard Gray, who's like a phenomenal painter. He even gave him like a little...
Give him a nose job?
Nose job. Ha, ha, ha. Kind of fitting. Because I was looking at it and I'm like...
Well, if you haven't altered him, is he really Fabius?
Right.
Good call.
Because initially too, and after reading some of the books and some of the stories with him, like he seems like he's more often than not kind of wearing a helmet.
Yeah.
So I'm still at that point in my build where I'm like, do I cut that head off and do some crazy multi-eyed, you know, helmet with tubes going into it? And
that would be pretty sick.
It would be cool, right? Something different. So I'm looking at that. I'm probably going to go that route. And again, like it's not like his face is like terrible. It's just some of the artwork I see for him, it just doesn't look like the artwork. And I think that's probably what lingers in my mind. But again, a small gripe, the model's phenomenal. It's really well done.
You know, one of the things that's interesting when you're talking about how they're cutting the models, and this is where I was talking about Celestine, right? Like when you saw how that model go together, I was like, wow, is this really necessary that you did the hair like this? And then as I as I finally like got it in place and saw how it was going together, I was like, oh, I see why they did this, because it makes the hair look like an actual separate, separation, where if you were just to sculpt that as one piece, you wouldn't have that.
Sure.
Thing. It's genius, the stuff they're doing.
Oh, and he does have, I was looking at the box art. I'm like, what's going on with that severed head on his belt? Turns out after building it, it's a Sister of Battle head that's like mouth stitched shut and filled with wax, and phenomenal. So
that's
kind of
sick.
cool. And of course, the Marine corpse on the base, I'm going to paint in Imperial Fist's colors, because I normally play against my buddy Bob. So you're welcome, Bob. Just a really well done model, man. I just can't wait to see what they do with Lucius and some of these other characters.
Yeah.
I mean, Games Workshop, you're just killing it, dude.
Yeah, I it's funny because like I said, I relatively recently both of these models, the original and this one, and I think I'll probably take the original and turn him into some kind of Iron Warrior wearing a flesh cape, because that seems like a thing an Iron Warrior would be into.
Yeah.
But then, what struck me on the new Fabius model is the detail and how fine the tubing on his back array is.
Or the front little, he's got like a front little like Vox grill thing that has 3 plastic fine tubes that backfeed into the back piece.
And what's crazy is
lining
they line
those up
up.
was a pain in the butt. Like, I can only imagine those of you poor people that use super glue.
I use it.
Have fun.
Hey, I did the same thing with
Have fun.
Celestine. She has tubes and stuff that come out of, but the crazy thing is when you put it in place correctly, how close it lines up.
Oh, yeah.
Like you're just like, oh,
Pristine.
yeah.
Yeah, the detail level, the upgrade of detail, and I think that was, really what you alluded to of that initial Jess Goodwin sculpt is like, it's, for the time, it was phenomenal. It still holds up as a beautiful model, albeit smallish, but my goodness, this new one is just a whole nother level, but maintaining that aesthetic. It's
And a
so
subtle
cool.
thing too, like, which I gathered just from building him, a very subtle thing is that like, Fabius is a man of like ambition, right? Like he's always moving forward, and the way even they positioned his feet, like he's not just like standing there, hey, I'm Fabius. Like his feet are like literally in movement, the way they go down. Just those little subtle things.
Yeah, heel toe, kind of.
Heel toe. Like this guy's on the move. Like he's
But
got
like this very upright pose, this very confident pose.
Yeah.
The skull cane is it's he's a great example of how you can have a model be dynamic and commanding without them jumping off a hero rock.
Sure.
Like there is no question that this guy has purpose and movement without jumping off a hero rock.
exactly.
It's just a great
It's
figure.
just, I didn't need that distraction from my distraction, though.
Sure
I
you
got to
did.
finish those 10 Plague Marines. But yeah, phenomenal model. How about you, Jody? What are your thoughts on Mr. World Claimer?
Mr. World Claimer. So there's just the one. He's new. He was released in early 2019 with Vigilis getting released. And I got to be honest, this is a model I really want to see in hand. I haven't held him in hand and seen the thing in person. I feel like the paint job that's on him or the pose he's in doesn't photograph well.
He's in that leaping pose, right?
Right. So he's in a jumping pose he's got his lightning claw stretched forward. He has kind of the overhand grip on his hell spear. He's got the great big, Raptor turbine jump pack with the skulls arrayed on it. And I think there's an issue. I know that the heavy metal team, they paint incredibly well, that this is a beautifully painted model. So that's not what I'm knocking. But there is a formula they have to apply in a style they paint in. And visually, your eye is drawn more to his back than to his face. And I feel like it's throwing the model off a little bit. He's leaping off a dead Marine. And funny enough, I'm like, I think it would have been better if it was the hero rock this time instead of the dead Marine, to get that sense of like he's up more. He's actually up in the air as opposed to down on the ground. And for good or ill, he has all the same benefits and problems that all the Raptor models do. And as I'll talk about when I get to his rules, he really is supposed to be with a unit of Raptors. That's his shtick. And the backpacks are so big and cool, but they're so big that you end up looking at them and it throws the visual appeal of the model kind of out of balance. So it's a really well done model. I love that. And I think that's what they were going for the way he's posed is he has this Vox grill that is essential not only to his story and a little bit to his rules, that sticks up in front of his face.
Yeah.
But
it's not on his face.
It's not on his
it's
face.
like kind of sitting in front of his mouth.
And it kind of puts the whole thing at this weird, like, where am I supposed to be looking? Which part of it's just kind of feels visually messy, which isn't to say it's a bad model. It's just whenever I see a model anymore that I go like, man, that's visually busy. It's always a model that I go, I wonder what that looks like in hand. So there's a lot going on this dude with the Hellspear and the skulls flailing off him and the Vox thing and the lightning claw and the jumping through the air. And
I think it's really the skulls that are sticking off his backpack.
Yeah, they're really drawing
it's
your
a
eye.
little too much.
Like if
I would ditch those skulls.
Yeah, if you hold your thumbs up and ditch those, like, because the studio did a really good job of, excuse me, painting his face bright, right?
Yeah.
Like your eye goes to that face, but it's just kind of, I agree. Like, where am I looking? Right?
And there's a
It's a fair
directional
point. I think it's a fair point.
Not to get too art nerdy, there's a directional kind of force problem of the way they've photographed him. His feet are like the tip of a triangle, and then the spikes off his back make a V shooting upwards.
Yeah.
Yep.
So your eye is drawn up to the top of that V every time. That's
Interesting.
where you're going to look because of those arrows. There's literally arrows, three arrows pointing up at the top. So
Which
your
at the
eye's
same
gonna
time is like
look
your
at that.
escape from the artwork, but we're not looking at like a piece of canvas art, right?
Right.
It's a miniature.
Yeah, and
So-
in a flat piece that would move you around the piece, but on a miniature, it's like, no, I want to refocus. And so I really just need to get the guy in hand because there's so many cool elements.
So are you going to do like a little Black Legion contingent? Are you thinking?
If I do him, he's going to be an Ironware.
Okay.
I'm just going to YOLO.
Shift him over to that.
Because I don't know. I actually assembled him, but I converted him into like the Black Legion Chainsword Doom Lord.
Okay.
From all and the model's phenomenal. Like it is really really well done. But I left the skulls off the backpack and gave him like 2 wicked chainswords from like the Havoc kit, and it worked out pretty well. But I'm curious to see what you do with him and how you Iron Warriors him up.
Yeah, I mean, just by nature of being an Iron Warrior, it would flatten out so much of him that his head being fleshy would pop much, much more because the rest of the canvas would be really flat. Whereas on Black Legion, you've got that contrast of black armor and gold trim. It's hard then to balance.
Yeah.
Your eye wants to go to all those other elements already because you got black and gold side by side.
I think I
think it's a cool
Vox
model.
caster thing or whatever it's called that he has in front of him also gets a little lost in their paint job because it's black. It looks like the rest of the armor. You are drawn to the head, which I think is good, but then you kind of miss this interesting. It's almost like the mouth of Sauron.
Totally.
right?
Yeah. That's exactly what I think of. Yeah.
And that's
And I'm
who
sure
he
it's
is.
inspired by that.
Yep.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So what about Armin? Because he's been around a minute.
So Armin is interesting. So first off, I have to preface this by saying a lot of times in 40K, and I said this in the past, I look at a model and my initial take on it is, I don't like this style at all. And then over time, it kind of wears me down. The most famous of this is like the Land Raider and the Rhino. Initially, I was like, I don't like these boxy things. And now I'm like, Land Raiders, awesome, For me, Thousand Suns, the first time I saw Thousand Suns with the headdresses and that kind of thing, I was like, yeah, that looks really dumb. Like, I am super not into that. Now I'm like super into it.
Yeah.
So
You
like,
seem to have come around.
yeah,
Takes
so
time.
it's like kind of come around, and I'm like, it sometimes takes me time to appreciate what they have done and why they've done it, and then it grows on me. And so, for me, the first model of Armin was, he's very much the old flat plane model.
Boy, is he.
He's got the pistol out to the side, like down to the side, like I'm disco guy, and he's like holding up the staff, the black staff of Armin. And I bought him because I was like, well, I have to have Armin. It's like, but I wasn't a huge fan. Now, mind you, when you look at again the heavy metal paint job on him, you're like, oh, they've really elevated the model based on the paint job.
The thing is, though, too, keep in mind that was sculpted with a wire armature and green stuff.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know what I mean? Like this
listen,
is way before CAD.
Agreed. And limitations in the way you could spin cast things and that kind of thing. And
Right.
he was metal. And then he came out later in fine cast, same model in fine cast.
Sure.
Not arguing that for its day, fantastically detailed. There is a ton of detail
That's
on this
again
model.
93, 94 sculpt.
From
That's old.
from recessed tubing, under the arm to the way the robe flows to even the edging and intricate design on the pistols. There's no doubt that for its time, it was a quality model. It did not resonate with me. I looked at the headdress and I was like, this is ridiculously big.
It's a big hat. But he also
That was the era of big hats.
He still has a big hat though.
He does. But when you so the next model to come out for Armin was actually not the current model. The next model to come out for him
FW.
was the 30K plastic Armin, which was included in the
Was that really Aramon?
Yep, and he was included in the
Did not know that.
Burning of Prospero
Right.
box set.
Right.
And in fact, people who liked Thousand Suns went nuts when this came out because they were like, "Ooh, an Armin sculpt, a new Armin sculpt."
Put that old second edition head on him.
I personally have 2 of these. Have not assembled either of them because very quickly after that model, which let's talk about that model. It is a 30K sculpt. The headdress is much more subdued. They aren't all chaosified. Sure. So he doesn't have skulls and fetishes like arcane fetishes.
It's a hat in training.
Yeah, and he's also not carrying the black staff of Armin. He's carrying his original staff that ends up getting destroyed during the Siege of Prospero. Ultimately, part of this becomes the black staff of Armin. But it's a cool figure. I mean, he's kind of reaching forward, casting. He's holding his staff. It's well done. The
Very
cloaks
Darth
come out.
Vader.
Super Darth Vader. I love the headdress, and I love the mask. I think it looks fantastic.
Well, I did not realize that was Aramon.
Yep.
I just thought it was a
neither did I.
generic sorcerer.
Nope, rules for him in the box set too. But quickly after him came the current version of Armin, which the minute I saw this model, I was like, "Oh my god, I have a new favorite model in 40K." Not only so, very much an homage to the original. The headdress is still big and ridiculous. But it feels more scaled to his size. He's increased in size.
Yeah.
He is beefy. Like when you looked at him, you're like, oh, he's huge. He has the choice of being on the disc or off the disc. He has all the chaos fetishes on him that the original one did, but his pose is so dynamic. He's kind of stepping forward. He's clearly aggressive. His staff is kind of held at an angle that doesn't make it now a flat plane anymore. And he's not holding the pistol, but he's instead got, the sorcerer's powers coming out of his hand. This is probably my favorite model right now.
He's really nice. I actually, as a side tangent project, I started working on him. He's all in a million sub assemblies.
Yep.
So I was just like, I have to paint this guy. He's too cool.
He's beautiful.
Yeah.
He's beautiful. And Colin for mine did an incredible job on him. I absolutely love putting him on the table. He's fun to play, and he's just every time I put him on, I'm like, there's my bad guy, right?
boy.
Like even the backpack, like the vents on the backpack are separated and come down.
That's always been it, as seemingly trivial as it is. The backpack of Armin's always been one of my favorite bits. That like double exhaust kind of arced clawed arms. I remember actually for some reason pilfering those bits and destroying an original one of them, the metal ones, for some purpose long ago, just because it's such a cool bit. Yeah, this guy is from blade to horned blade top on his helmet is just one great detail after the other.
The more you look at him, you're like, oh, and there's another feature that's really cool.
And also, this is not a you're going to want to take your time painting this fella. This is not an easy act. Of all the models we've just talked about, this guy is gonna test your limits on some things.
And sub-assemble him if you value your sanity.
Colin
so
did
many
such
details.
a good job on mine. I'm in love with this model.
Yeah, it's a beautiful model.
And it's literally the model that when I go to my cabinet and pull him down, I'm like, there's Armin. Every time I'm like, all right,
You're my boy, Blue.
Yeah, totally. So I couldn't have asked for a better representation. He kind of leaped ahead of several models that have been my favorite for years, which are the original Typhus with his original pose, and the Space Marine Chaplain in Terminator armor. Those for me are like the iconic, like cool 40K model. This guy is taken over number one in my book.
I see why you picked him.
Yeah, as bad guys go, this guy's pretty tough to beat. He is the epitome of evil chaos sorcerer.
Plus, I love it when Games Workshop, which I kind of wish they do more, is when they give a character that was previously on foot a sweet ride.
Right, a little option.
You know what I mean? Like, mobility is key. You know,
The other thing I'd like is like I like Marathi, how she can like come, she changes. Isn't she the one that changes
in AOS?
In AOS,
yeah.
Where like she has this one.
She gets
form,
angry,
and then this is my final form. You know, like I kind of dig that idea. I'd like to see something like that in 40K, maybe a couple times too. I think that'd be cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll see it.
So let's talk about the rules of these heroes and like, do they match the lore, and are they any good?
And would you
put them in
take
your
them?
army?
Yeah.
And Justin, why don't you kick it off?
Well, I will answer. I think as we should all answer that question last. We'll go over his abilities. So, first off, I would say that Fabius Bile's rules definitely match his lore. Okay. He's not like a total beat stick. He's decent in combat. He's not super cyan crazy. I mean, he can put out some hurt, but he's got a cool needle pistol. He's shooting all kinds of who knows what out of this Cyclos Needler.
Yeah.
He's got an 18-inch pistol, right, which is kind of cool. Because this guy is literally going to be, you want to keep him, due to his rules, you want to keep him on foot kind of as the anchor for your army, for all your, and you kind of want to focus on mostly having infantry.
I have always
kind
of wondered how he would really like work on the battlefield. Like, so I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, there's things.
So you put him around, you put infantry around him.
Yeah, so you don't want to have him, first off, he's a big buff character, right?
Okay, makes sense.
Exactly. Like his whole thing is about like augmenting his soldiers, willing or not, they get augmented. And just innately, all of the agents of Bile, they, just by having that keyword from the War of the Spider, they gain +1 movement and +1 strength. And there's all kinds of stratagems and other abilities to make them even faster and stronger. So just an innate ability, kind of cool. So he's definitely like this big buff character. But he back to his basic fundamental stuff. He's got an 18-inch pistol, 3 shots, wounds all non-vehicles on 2 ups, -2 for 2 damage. That's not bad. Nope. That's really good chip damage, especially that flat 2 damage. He's going to drop 1 or 2 Primaris Marines with every volley, right? Yeah. Not bad.
It's interesting that he's ballistic skill 3. That he's not a 2.
I would have thought he'd be higher on the ballistic skills.
He's an old guy.
He's getting old.
His eyesight's going. Maybe you should just change out his eyes.
He totally could. He totally could. In combat, he's decent. He's got his famous his pimp cane, his rod of torment.
It is indeed.
It totally is. People often refer to him as Fabulous Bill for a reason. But he's got the Rod of Torment, and it gives him +1 strength, so he'll be strength 5, -1 AP for D3 damage. It's not bad. Again, not against vehicles. He just likes hitting fleshy things. And then his Chirurgeon, I think that's how you pronounce that.
That's how you pronounce it.
Chirurgeon.
Maybe it's Kai. I bet it's Chirurgeon.
Chirurgeon. Yeah, that sounds right.
The arm spider jobbies.
Yeah, his Dr. Octopus, not at all Dr. Octopus life-granting thing, gives him 3 extra strength 4 attacks at -2 for 1 damage. So, all in all, I mean, he's got like, what is that?
Not too bad.
It's not too bad. But
5 wounds.
He's not that strong, so he's really going to be kind of doing what his army does and just kind of killing chaff, killing infantry. What the Chirurgeon does, though, is it allows him to regenerate D3 wounds a turn, right? Because when you read the lore on this guy, like this thing, he's got like an unguent and a little elixir that pumps into his system for any given situation. Like he never goes into a battle saying, "Oh, I'm going to fight some Dark Eldar today. I hope this goes well." Like he was afflicted by the Glass Plague, which was like a Dark Eldar plague that like a venom toxin missile that turned everybody to glass, right? He had that little elixir.
Cool. That's pretty cool.
In his little backpack.
Yeah.
Like, I'm good. I got this. So
he's like, glass? I don't think so.
No. So pretty cool. I mean, like he's I didn't look up his points. We'll look at that later. But obviously, if you're doing an Agents of Bile army, you're going to take him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're going to take him. And I'm not going to lie, after reading the novels and, reading The War of the Spider,
kind of interested in getting him on the
maybe
field
just a crusade force. Maybe just a crusade force. But yeah, again, last but not least, where he really thrives is that he just absolutely buffs your army.
Nice.
So many stratagems and so many things that he can do, and he can burn stratagems himself from the book to make him even choppier in combat. But I don't think that's where he should be burning those. Like, he should be behind your possessed and your obliterators and buffing those things that are going to do all the damage. But will I take him? Absolutely.
Does he match the lore?
Yes, completely.
You think the table rules match the lore?
I feel like he does. I kind of would have liked to see him start with maybe it would be game breaking, but I kind of wanted to see him go to 6 wounds.
I don't think that would be game breaking.
No, I thought that too when I was looking. I was like,
makes
I
sense.
feel like he should be a little more durable.
Yeah. Or even in the moment shrug damage.
Maybe.
Instead of having the courage and regenerate D3 wounds, it automatically regenerates 1, and then he gets a 5-up feel no pain.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, I
could see that.
I don't think he's really meant to be that frontline kind of a fighter.
No.
You're trying to avoid him, which fits his lore, right?
Absolutely.
He's the orchestrator of mayhem in the background, saying minions, much like a homunculus, as we'll get into with lore. You minions go forth and do my work, and I'm going to be back here
sending you in.
Yeah. So,
all right, Jody.
So Harken World Claimer. He has a jump back, so he's movement 12. He is weapon skill, ballistic skill 2, strength and toughness 4. He has 5 wounds, just like Gold Fabius. He has 5 attacks, and he is lead 9. Save 3 up, and then he has a 4 up invul. So he does get to sport some durability there with his Sigil of Corruption. His, as I mentioned before, he has the Hell Spear, which is used for throwing, not for close combat. It is a range 12, assault 1. Strength +1, AP -3, damage D3. So it does some moves when he throws it. It's okay. The D3 is kind of iffy.
That thing should be flat 3. Come on.
For one shot, I kind of felt that way too. If this is the thing, he shows up, he impales into the planet's crust and says, go with that. Says that, hey, Abaddon's showing up and I'm his guy.
I'm laying the groundwork.
Yeah, let's make that go. But that's, as I mentioned, and then he has a lightning claw, which does what a lightning claw does. Nothing special there, but it does mean that he is, strength 4 re-rolling failed wound rolls. Yeah. So that's something.
5 attacks.
5 attacks is okay.
Bad, but it's at strength 4 though.
It's a strength 4. Yeah, it's for this guy who's supposed to be this big thing. So when I looked at it, I was like, okay, well the combat rules are good. They're not great, but maybe there's something that really encapsulates his flair for this the power of his arrival. So he is known as the Lord of Raptors. So he has a reroll bubble for all raptor units, including himself, of 6 inches, and they get to reroll melee attacks. So he does hit on a 2+, rerolling 2+
squads.
You throw him with the Raptors.
He has the Raptor keyword,
right?
I would hope
he does. He has deep strike, like the Raptors do, exact same keyword, so he can drop in with them. So that makes sense. His kind of flare rule is the Herald of the Apocalypse. It's an 18-inch area effect, and it causes -1 leadership to all enemy units within 18 inches, which, as we all know, is it always sounds neat, but deducting leadership off your opponent really isn't that big a deal. Now, I will say this couples with an ability the Raptors have, again, assuming he's going to be with a Raptor unit. They have something called Fearsome Visage that is 1 inch and also gives -1 leadership. So
now total -2.
-2. So if you're engaged with him and his Raptor squad, it's -2. But the way in 9th leadership works, you're killing a guy because of that.
Effective.
Maybe it's not as big of a deal.
It's not nearly as big of a deal. Yeah.
He has one last special
Until
rule.
it is, and then you're like, oh.
Now that's the thing.
I mean, if there's one Marine standing on an objective or whatever,
a couple,
or a Terminator where you're popping off a couple 3 wounds, then it's pretty rad. And then he has Head Claimer. Each time he slays a character model, he increases by an attack.
I've always felt this ability is so situational and so difficult to pull off.
Which is literally how I feel about all of his abilities.
Yeah. I felt the same when I read his rules in the...
Yeah. So would I use him? Yes, absolutely. He's awesome and he deep strikes in with Raptors and he's super cool. Should I use him? No.
Probably not.
No. So here's the other killer is he has in the recent updates, he's dropped from 6 power level down to 5.
Wow.
And he's dropped from 115 points down to 95. So a 20-point drop is substantial. Is it enough? No. He's for those abilities that are all super situational, I just feel like he's got to be less. And he used to be only 5 points less than Karn, who was the most expensive,
way better,
and is better in every conceivable way. He is now down very much in the middle of the pack of named character points values. So for his points, he's better, but he's still, man, this is a vanity choice.
Well, especially when you read the rules for like that brutal chainsword Black Legion Lord, they can take that chainsword relic in that book, and you're like, I kind of want to take him.
Yeah, that
was just kind of what I did, but.
So unfortunately, it's a total vanity choice to take him. And I'll be honest, as I read through his rules a few times, I was like, this is one of those times where I'm like, am I missing something? Why is this guy this many? What I just feel like I'm not seeing it.
Yeah.
He admittedly, he is 5 attacks with a 12-inch movement. And most of these characters aren't zipping around very fast. So you do have that ability. And he's got his raptors with him.
Which are keeping up with him.
But there's nothing that when they drop in, they're going to get into combat anymore effectively.
Yeah.
Okay, they drop in at the usual deep strike 9-inch gap.
I feel like there is some rules in that book that makes them roll like 3d6 discard on the charge. It's a stratagem or it's like a detachment special rule.
That would be, there would have to be something like that at play to make him even considerable.
Yeah.
But like I said, would I take him? Yes. Should you take him? No, probably not. Probably not.
When you read the lore behind that guy and he drops down and people are committing suicide because they hear his voice.
Yeah.
Doesn't really represent it.
No, for his, Herald of the Apocalypse.
If the leadership thing was like big.
Like neg 2 or neg
3.
3 or something.
Yeah. Like then you're talking, okay.
I'd rather, honestly, what I'd rather see is let me roll a D6 at each unit, and on a 6 they take D whatever mortal wounds, and that's guys running away and fleeing pre-battle. And it's still like that's kind of iffy. Yeah, but it's iffy, and it feels like something happened. There's a good chance this isn't going to do anything.
Hopefully we see him updated next Chaos Marine Codex.
That is my hope, because for being the right hand man, the Herald of Abaddon himself, I'm like, dude, this guy ought to lay waste.
Yeah.
So does Ahriman lay waste?
Well, let me tell you.
I already know. Thank you very much.
I have played him quite a bit. So, is he good? Does he represent the lore? I'm just going to answer that up front. Yeah, totally does. So he's weapon skill, ballistic skill, 2+. So, no problems there. He's 5 wounds. He's 4 attacks. He's got a 3-up, 4-up invuln save. He can bolster that with some psychic stuff. He has the Black Staff of Ahriman, which gives him strength +2. So now he's attacking at +6. It's AP -1, but it causes 3 wounds per attack. So speaking of,
that is the Black Staff.
It is the Black Staff. It also has another little benefit. It also he adds 1 to any psychic test or deny the witch test he takes, which has gotten me out of into some great smite range many a time. He is the Lord of the 1,000 Suns, so reroll hit rolls of 1 made by 1,000 Suns units within 6 inches of him, and he can manifest 3 psychic powers per turn on his phase and deny 3 enemy psychic tests.
Yeah, dude, that deny 3 is no insane, especially at +1. Yeah.
Yep. You put him on the Disc of Zeech, and he's zipping around at 12 inches, buffing, staying close to units, empowering rubric Marines, and he gets around. And then once he gets involved in combat, he's no joke. Like, he will tear stuff up.
Dude, how excited are you for your Marines to go to 2 wounds?
Dude. Yeah, except I think, well, my other concern there is that I think more weapons are going to cause multi-wounds, which is going to really diminish my all is dust rule. So I wonder if they're going to make some adjustment to that. So that he has smite plus 3 other powers, which he takes from the Discipline of Change or something. I'm not looking at right now. The Discipline of Change and the Dark Hereticus powers. So he can pick from that. And
Warp Time.
There's some great ones in
pretty
there.
common on him.
Yep. And so and I've used that to great effect as well. He is a psychic beast in combat. I use him quite effectively. So he is the arch sorcerer of Tzeentch. I think he's well represented here. I always put him on a disc for the mobility piece. I think it's just worth the extra points. And although he's only toughness 4, you can make good use of him in just about any situation. He's a character, so he can float back there and play games with. Can you target him? No, you can't. And I use him frequently because I love the model. I love playing the model, and for his points and power level, I think he's a great deal.
So rating,
and he's gone up. I think he's gone up in points.
Sounds like Carl's going for a 10 for Ahriman.
Okay,
10 out of 10.
10. Yeah, he's my favorite. He's my favorite of all the favorites.
What about you, Jody?
Yeah, sadly, as much as I love the model and I like the theme, he's landing in that I think a generous 4.5.
There you go. Yeah, that's pretty generous. 3 to 4.
Fabius, I'd give him a solid 8.
Yeah,
I'd give him a solid 8. Just I'd like to see him a little bit tougher, a little bit harder to kill. But
so when you're talking about what supplements like in 40K he's been represented in over the years, Justin, where's Fabius kind of shown up?
He's been around for a long time. Good old Bill has been around since Codex wise, 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 4th edition, 6th edition. He was recently in the War of the Spider.
Yep.
Where he got some couple little tweaks and updates, which was nice to see. He's also been in the Homunculus Coven Codex.
Oh, I remember. Yeah,
he had a little lore piece because, as we'll get into, he got to train with the Masters of Pain themselves. He was in the Realms of Chaos, Slaves to Darkness, and Warlords of the Dark Millennium.
All right. And where is Harkin shown up?
Pretty
recently.
Yep, he like I said, Cult of the New pretty aggressively here. Chaos Space Marines 8th edition, the revised codex, so the new one.
Oh, they actually put him into the new.
Yep, he is in the revised book. Yeah, I think a lot of people felt that way.
Kind of glanced
and
over
then his original first time he showed up was in Imperial Nihilus, the Vigilus Defiant book.
Okay, yeah, that was where he first kind of. They made a big deal when he arrived.
Yeah.
And Carl, it looks like Armand gets around.
Armand's been everywhere, man. Same with Fabius. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th edition Chaos Space Marine Codex. Thousand Suns Codex in 8th edition. So, was it 7th? Did he get a 7th and then 8th? I know there's
probably.
an 8th. I can't remember if there was a previous Thousand Suns Codex.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Gathering Storm, he was in Fracture of Bealtan, mentioned there. Warzone Fenris, The Wrath of Magnus. So this was kind of the end of 7th edition, is leading up to Fall Acadia, and that's a pretty interesting story. That's where Magnus actually makes his appearance and all that. The Horus Heresy Burning of Prospero box set. We talked about that 3rd model that he has. There's mention of his rules there and such, and Horus Heresy Book 7 Inferno, the big black book which is basically details out the entire Burning of Prospero.
Right.
So he's in there as well. So yeah, he's interesting in the fact that, like these others we talk about, but he really spans 30K to 40K, and you have rules for both of them in those
That's pretty cool.
sets, which is kind of neat.
Which Fabius, he never had any 30K love. I mean, he's in the lore a lot, as we'll get into with Black Library.
He might be. I'd have to go back and look at the early Black Legion books, but I don't think he's represented there. I could be mistaken there.
I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't, because in 30K he was very much like
Don't worry, we'll be corrected.
We'll be corrected. But he was also very much like, he was a busy man. He had more important things to do than die on a battlefield. But it's interesting too. Like both.
Spoiler alert! I'll tell you something later.
Okay. Well, he had a clone. He's fine. But obviously, both these characters too. There's been like a bunch of White Dwarf articles over the years they've been into.
Oh, actually, it's the other one, Lucius, that I was thinking of.
Oh,
never mind.
Well, he's the Eternal. He'll be fine.
Anyway, so then in Black Library, some of these are mentioned pretty heavily. You talked about one of the reasons you picked this guy is because he's there a lot. Yeah. I don't think we need to go through a whole list of these, but what do you think are like the kind of standouts here?
I mean, I think the standouts for Fabius is, I haven't read all of the books that he's been in, but
when your book is named Fabius,
actually named Fabius, yeah. He's just really been like so instrumental in like, so much of like the Emperor's Children lore, which is really interesting because he kind of wants nothing to do with them. Like, obviously he started out as an Emperor's Children apothecary, but didn't quite involve himself with his own surgeries that he was okay with granting
Yeah.
upon the rest of the Emperor's children.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the standout thing for me because he's been in like a ton of books over the years, but just such a key character. And especially after reading Manflayer, I want to go back and finish Primogenitor and go back and read all these books with him because I just find him so fascinating. But there's like 15 books he's been in. It's crazy.
I have the collector's edition of Primogenitor if you'd like it.
I would love that.
It's the cover's all fleshy, like it's pretty cool.
Yeah, man.
You can totally have it.
Okay.
I like that. Yeah, for Jody.
Nope.
Okay. It hasn't been written about
You know
yet.
what? I was surprised. There wasn't a Vigilus book from Black Library.
There was not.
Yeah, I found that very surprising. I was like, oh, well, there's going to be no.
You think there'd be a tie-in?
Yeah.
Not so much yet.
Yeah, not a Black Library
Some
Vigilus
of the
book.
fights, they may have had short stories about
I
it.
know there's
something,
short
but-
stories because I went in a
Yeah.
little bit. I went looking for one that I know I read about him and could not find it
Okay.
anywhere. But yeah, there is not a Black Library novel.
It went like this. He dropped down. He put a spear in the earth and said, "Wah," and that was it.
Deuces. You're out.
For
3 power level.
Ahriman, most of it written by John French, to be perfectly honest. And the first 3 novels, which you can now get in, what do they call them when they bundle them? Omnibus. Is Ahriman, Exile, Sorcerer, and Unchained. And that really talks about, after the fall and after he's failed the rubric, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and then to the point where he really kind of comes into his own and is now the Ahriman that we know and seeking out certain things. And that series, like if you are looking for reading something about Ahriman, that series I would highly, highly recommend. He's also been featured in lots of the 30K novels by now, most, Thousand Suns and Prospero Burns, and but also recently Saturnine and the Solar War. So we're getting towards the end. That's all Siege of Terra stuff, and he's starting to show up there.
Nice.
And then he was also in Daemon Fugue, which is the Demonifuge, which is the graphic novel that I got the colorized version of. And
He wants that Black Library, man.
He's in
He
there as
wants
well.
that thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
I forgot he was in there.
Yeah, he's very briefly. I mean, he's kind of like Darth Vader in it,
Yeah.
but it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So, last but not least, let's talk about our favorite story involving this character. And Justin, take it away.
Well, from a guy that has, countless stories of him just slaughtering entire planets, like billions and billions of deaths, I had to pick a family-friendly story. And this was Vengeance of the Scars. And this was a short snippet from the Homunculus Coven's book. And kind of a cool little fact about Fabius, like I alluded to earlier, he's like pretty much, as far as I know, the only human that's gone to train with the Dark Eldar. These guys thought, oh, this guy's there's something to this guy.
He's twisted enough.
Guy's
He's
got
twisted
potential.
enough. And he very much like Rick and Morty'd himself into Kimura, like just forced his way in like on a stolen ship and like, you will teach me. And they're like, this is weird. We're not used to this. Okay. So he partners
I'm
up.
sure that's how the conversation went.
Summarizing. And the book Manflayer definitely goes into this story like more in depth. But fundamentally, what he does is he trains under the tutelage of this homunculi lord by the name of Hexakyres, and learns all kinds. Like he's like, man, I'm good. I know how to torture somebody until I go to this place, and I don't really know that much, right? Which is kind of crazy because this is like he's been around for a long time at this point. Like he's tortured many a person, but he goes to study with the 13 Scars Coven and learns everything he can from them, and he helps them build this. Like to this day, they reside in this living fortress. Like their entire domicile is this living tower of flesh that's been constructed from all the foes that they've slaughtered over the years, and obviously some other technologies.
Called the Tower of Phallicus.
Yeah, just visually, and apparently, like it's because all the homunculus coven stuff. And I'm sorry, I promise this is a Fabius Bile story, but they're all like in like the lower parts, as they would be in Kimura. And this thing is like stuck to the roof of like a stalagmite or a stalactite, just like gripping onto the ceiling. Yeah, just dripping down like this. And this thing is like God machine sized. Like it's a lot of flesh.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a ton of flesh.
Well, anything worth doing.
Yeah. So he helps them make this thing, right? Which is kind of cool. They're like, we learned something too. and learns everything he can from them, especially like he was there to really focus on learning how to clone things, right? Because the Dark Eldar are really good at that. Learns all he can and then just jets out and leaves because they were planning on like teaching him all they could and killing him.
Right.
Like that's the way the Dark Eldar roll.
for fun.
Yeah, just for fun.
For funsies.
Oh, he would have been tortured for eons, right?
Yeah.
But he jets out, probably knew that was going to happen, jets out. They're not too happy, right? He then teaches all of his little Emperor's children, acolytes, right? All these little, hey, here's a way you can torture somebody even better. He teaches them all this. The homunculus find out about this, and this really aggravates them. So while all this battle's going on, they find a way to mobilize this tower of flesh by like harnessing these Lamian suns. Okay. Because the Dark Eldar steal sunlight for their power and stuff. They animate this thing and it just like rips away from Kimura and starts like sloughing and moving, right? This massive, you just imagine this freaking fortress of flesh, and it tears away through the web into the webway. And there's this massive battle that takes place where you have all of his twisted followers fighting against all the Coven followers, and they're just like gleefully slaughtering each other in horrible ways. And it's really fun to read about in Manflayer. Eventually,
oh, that's where it's from.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, kind of, I should have said spoiler alert, but the way it ends is more in depth than I'll say here. Basically, Fabius knew that all of his followers were not in a good place, and it was kind of a losing battle. But he was kind of doing this whole thing to save time, and he's all about expending his boys to save his own arse, right? And he ends up being pushed back to like his little inner sanctum, and just everybody's slaughtered around him. And he has a little nugget of information, you know, because he always has a plan, which I won't say now. You got to read the book. But they come to an agreement.
Okay.
And Hexacaries and his homunculi lords basically just surgically remove that part of his memory, so he doesn't have all their little knowledge, and they jet, saving him.
It was all pointless.
In the end, it was kind of all pointless, but come on, he's got another clone elsewhere with the same brain.
He stored that information.
He's got a memory.
Yeah.
You know, he's good. But just reading that story in that book was super cool.
That's pretty fun.
It's grim. Like my favorite part too is like all the Emperor's children, like the homunculi grant them like a death by, you know, just like a death by pleasure.
Yeah.
You know, like they overloaded the Emperor's children pleasure sensors and like dispatched all those guys that way. It was really brutal.
Death by pleasure.
Death by pleasure. In the 41st millennium, could you ask for more?
Yeah, pretty much. That's probably the best way to go.
That's
Jody.
Truly. Worst way to go. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Vigilus because, you know, that's where he's from.
Yeah.
So initially Vigilus was actually not assaulted by Chaos. It was under assault from Genestealer cults and orcs and Drukhari.
Yep.
However, the planet, as it fell further and further...
Not a tower of flesh.
Not a tower of flesh. But towers will feature here. Let's see if it's a theme. Space Marine chapters were then sent to protect the planet and all of its vital resources, along with Marnius Calgar, who at this time, if you'll remember, was newly reformed from crossing the rubric Primaris. And they're sent to defend the planet. Kind of Tigerius is like, hey, yo, go there. I'm bleeding out of your eyes and do the thing. And then, the planet of the surface is totally strained with the conflict of war. The Noctis Eterna, or, you know, the Cicatrix Maledictum, is worsening over the planet. And if people look at it, it causes them to go mad.
Yep.
So in a strange decree, the senators say that nobody should look up.
As you do.
As one does. That's a thing you can decree. So while that's going on, this growing pall of pollution covers the upper spires and the upper atmosphere of the major hive zones. So as that's going on, then all of course, as this pollution comes in, word starts coming down that defense arrays and these upper spire levels aren't reporting back, and they're unmanned, and that there's these arcane scrawls or scrawlings and tech writings are scrawled all over the walls in blood. And then there was a story actually told, and I found the narrative somewhere, and this is the one I couldn't find. There's a narrative of this Marine kill team effectively making their way up the spire to investigate.
That sounds pretty cool, actually.
And as they're getting up there, and it's Reavers on their repelling guns, and like there's a librarian with them that's checking it out.
That's cool.
But the librarian is the only non-Primaris in the group, and the rest of them are these Primaris guys. And at one point, Gene Stealers come running down the side of a spire past them.
Okay.
And they're like, what the hell's going on? And at that moment, Helldrakes and Warp Talons descend out of the mist and just lay waste to these guys and just unveil themselves. And coming out of this pollution, Harkin drops down as, the herald of the apocalypse. And the World Claimer's voice echoed across the planet and proved to be terrifying in itself. The woe he promised by his speechers, the picture it painted of hells to come that turned men's guts to water. His message rang out across the planet from countless hijacked Voct units tainted with script code. It was bald, crackling, and distorted from the gargoyle voxes of 1,000 raptors and warp talons. Its meaning was undeniably clear, and its message stark. The planet belonged to Abaddon the Despoiler, and he would soon be there to claim it in person. Quote, "This planet is claimed in the name of Abaddon the Despoiler of worlds. Know that you will kneel before him, or you will burn." And at that, he throws the spear down into the crust of the planet and says, "You have 80 days and 80 nights."
Nice.
And that's
Then he hit for a D3 damage.
And he hit for a D3 damage. The planet took
To a
taking a
planet.
big D3. Yeah, but it's this really cool drop assault that's orchestrated where he drops down out of orbit onto the top of the spires, hides and kind of garners all of these aerial units.
Yeah.
And then they drop out of the clouds all at once to launch
cool.
this massive assault.
Death from above.
God, it killed me though that I could not find the narrative.
The kill
I
team
think
thing?
it was Ultramarines, and it's a Reaver hit squad kill team with a Primaris, and they're making their way up, and it's describing this first unveiling of the Raptors
That's pretty
dropping
cool.
down, and they're like, "Oh, it's chaos," and these Primaris, guys had no knowledge of fighting chaos yet. This was
Right, right.
that was
Some of their first encounters.
yeah, so they're overwhelmed by the psychic evil, and it was a great short story, but man, for the life of me, could not find the thing. So I'm wondering if it was the little booklet that was included with Shadow Spear.
Ooh, I wonder.
But somebody out there knows exactly what I'm talking about, so go ahead and at me and help me find that thing, because it's cool.
Well, my story comes from Armin Exile, which is the first book that John French wrote about Armin, and it is it's kind of just one of the early opening phases. And so a little bit of spoiler warning, but I'm not going to spoil the book for you. This is kind of just the opening view of it. And where we pick up is Armin is, as the title of the book says, in exile. And he's kind of exiled himself. I mean, certainly other sorcerers from the Planet of Sorcerers don't want him around anymore. He has basically turned all of their friends to dust at this point by casting the Rubric of Ahriman. And if you're not familiar with that is, it's a spell he casts trying to remove the mutation ability. Yeah, the mutation gene that kind of ran through these through 1,000 Suns and would cause them to just burst into spawns and stuff if they channeled too much warp energy. So he was trying to remove that and ended up turning most of them to spirit dust that resides in the Rubric Marines now.
My
suits
bad
of armor.
really doesn't cover it on that one.
Yeah, oops. Oh, I should have carried the one. So he basically flees, right? Knowing that, I defied the will of Magnus to do this, and two, oops, I haven't made any friends here. I better get out of here. So, but he's also incredibly hard on himself about this. He's despondent, he's depressed. And where the book picks up is really interesting because you don't realize he's actually Armin. He's under the guise of another sorcerer. He's just taken on another sorcerer's name. He's actually subservient to a sorcerer and his war band, his little coven of sorcerers.
He's just trying to dig in
and he's just hiding. He's just like, what am I going to do? There's nothing to do. He keeps hearing this voice, and it's the voice of Zeech or whatever, kind of calling to him. And you kind of finally realize it's Armin when he kind of goes into this. He has this chest, this hidden chest on the ship in his quarters. He unlocks it and he pulls out Armin's helmet, right? And you realize, this is actually Armin. He's got a different name. And at that point, what happens is, I think it's 3 sorcerers end up coming for him from, they've been searching for Armin. They're trying to track him down. They come to this other sorcerer's ship, command ship or whatever, and they're like, hey, we're looking for Armin. And Armin's kind of standing there in his guise. He's wearing another helmet and stuff, and he's like, oh boy, here we go. And his the guy he's subservient to, who's, kind of like almost a caricature villain. He's kind of like, well, I'm powerful, and I'm in charge here. And these guys are like, well, listen, this is who we're looking for, and we think he's here. And he's like, he's not. And then finally, obviously, Armin gets like kind of unmasked as, oh wait, this is actually Armin. And this is the first time I have ever seen a psychic battle written. And John French, the thing he does very well is visuals and battles. And he this all of a sudden, Armin's like, I need to defend myself here, and he pretty much kills every other sorcerer in the room, like exploding heads, bodies, blocking their attacks and just shrugging them off and destroying them. And then, guys, heads are exploding and whatnot. Yeah. And I think there's one sorcerer left at the end, which was like the guy that was supposedly in charge, right? Who now realizes, I am way out of my league. Yeah. And it describes this battle over like 2 or 3 pages, and then it's like, and that was in the first 3 seconds or something like that, right? Wow. It's like he just kills everybody, and then he's like, okay, and all the bodies like fall to the ground. That's cool. And then he said, and it was just the way it's written is just so incredible, like how it unleashes this detail. It was fascinating, and it really, really exemplified his power. And all of a sudden, this other guy realizing, I'm so sorry for all the times I was mean to you,
Just kidding.
So I love it. If you haven't read the book, I highly recommend picking it up. It's a great read. It's funny. We actually, this came out back when Jeff was on the show, and we both read it, and we had one of our Forbidden Lore episodes. And what happened was we read the book, and Jeff didn't care for it as much as I did. Jeff is more critical of these books, and I think in a good way. Like, he points out things. And one of the things he didn't like about the book was he says, well, Armin doesn't really drive the story. Like, he doesn't really do anything. He just kind of goes along for the ride of the story. Like, I can kind of see that, that's cool. And so then what happened was I went out to England and went to Salute and met my friend Ed, who was the head of customer care at Forge World at that time. And he's like, hey, come over to this hotel. All of us are hanging out there. I'll introduce you to everybody. We can hang out. And we go to this hotel, and Ed's like, oh, hey, you're here. And then he's like, oh, this is so-and-so, and this is so-and-so, and this is Eve Packer, and this is so-and-so. And this is John French. And I'm like, oh, hey. Oh, hey. I'm like, hey, we just reviewed your book, Armin. He's like, I know, I heard. And I go, I really liked it. I liked it. Yeah. And he goes, you know what? Jeff brought up some great points.
Don't explode my head.
Yeah. He goes, Jeff brought up some great points. And he goes, and it's some things I'm taking into account for the sequel. But yeah, really good point. He goes, but I do have to say one thing. He goes, there's another story where the character really doesn't shape events and just kind of goes along for a ride. He goes, and that's Raiders of the Lost Ark. And he goes, so it's not always necessary for, and I was like, fair point. Jeff still holds to that criticism of the book, but I think it's worthless. I think it's worth reading. If you're into Thousand Suns, you've probably read
so
it
should already. I do the Night Lords?
Night Lords.
Okay.
And then Armin.
Okay.
Yep. In fact, those two, like when I keep switching between armies, they're like, what the hell? I don't know. I love those guys. So anyway,
after I finish the day after Roswell, I'll get right to that.
There you go. Oh, yeah. I figured you'd be reading something like that. All right. Well, listen, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back, and we're going to do our second piece of the Powers of Chaos. So we will be right back.
Hey, guys. I'm Caleb.
And this is Kat.
And we are CK Studios. We want to invite you and your friends to come paint with us at one of our exciting and fun-filled airbrush and hobby weekenders. Our weekend workshops are 2 days of intense hands-on training, working directly with and learning from some of the top gaming artists in the industry.
Whether you're brand new to miniature painting or an experienced veteran that wants to up your game, CK Studios has the workshop for you. Our workshops cover everything from learning the basics and building confidence in airbrushing, all the way up to creating that centerpiece model for your army or display case.
For more class info and our upcoming schedule, you can find us on Facebook at CK Studios Come Paint With Us, or register directly at ckstudios.bigcartel.com.
If you can't find a class near you, that's okay. Just contact us and we'll bring a workshop to you.
All right, and we're back, and we're still continuing our Champions of 40K Powers of Chaos 2, and this is our second part of that segment. So this time around, let's go with Jody. Jody, who was your round 2 pick, and why, and what appeals to you about them?
Cue dance music.
That's right. Or something classy if you like it. Had to change it up, had to move away from the Spez Marines and go into my preferred version of Chaos, which is Demons. Yes. So I went with the chief handmaiden of Slaanesh herself. She is a herald and now cursed, the Mask. At one time, her history, who is she? She was the most favored handmaiden of Slaanesh. She would comb the Dark Prince's hair, anoint his body with, or its body with blasphemous oils. Her dances, she would use them whenever Slaanesh was in a particularly bad mood, and she would dance and cheer up, Slaanesh and help to, I don't know, do whatever they do there in that place. So she was well beloved, but as it would happen, Tzeentch tricked Slaanesh into an impossible fight.
No way.
I know, Tzeentch, what a jerk. Tricked Slaanesh into an impossible battle against a joined force of Nurgle and Khorne. Slaanesh then, as a result, sat brooding on its throne, very upset. And
we're going to talk about that battle later, by the way.
All right. And doing what, the Mask always does, she decided she would cheer up her lord with a marvelous dance, and she broke out her most seductive, alluring, and kind gesture, but in gesture dance. But this scintillating dance, every lithe pirouette, every alluring gesture, every little fine movement she made that was, would be imperceptible and insanity causing to a mortal. Instead, Slaanesh saw mockery and insults in these fine, graceful dodges and pirouettes of its own failings, its own inability to emulate this. So in its pettiness and the spite, Slaanesh decided that it would curse. It said, if you want to dance, then dance forever. And it cursed the Mask to literally dance forever. So it uses she for the Mask. She is cursed and, bound to dance for all time. But her movements are so perfect and so alluring and so majestic that they cause insanity in mortals. It's more than you can endure to see her movement and her lithe and incredible
you can't help
skills.
but just want to just move, man.
Yeah,
you
just got to dance.
All up in the club. I got a song in my heart.
Okay. Yeah.
That was a change up I was not expecting. All right. So what do I like? Slaaneshi goodness. What's not to like? I mean, I've always said, which of the 4 gods are you going to fall to? I'll sign up for Slaanesh and a bucket of feels good. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I mean, the down the road things get a lot more complicated and confusing, but I've been in that relationship. So seriously though, it all jokes about Slaaneshi, simplicity aside, and I'll get into some details, it's the petty spite of Slaanesh that really I love about this, that this most beloved, most kind-hearted, for lack of a better term, minion of Slaanesh's creation sought to soothe, Slaanesh, and in the infinite arrogance and pettiness and, unpleasableness. There's an insatiability to Slaanesh that is so core to everything it does.
And the selfishness.
And the selfishness, that is the ultimate thing of Slaanesh, is this desire for things that you just can't have.
Yeah.
Right? That you're going to get everything you want, but it's always going to lead to wanting more, that you become insatiable. That it's this weird convolution of love and hate and grace and death that are so beautifully embodied in this character, that she is this dichotomy of the beauty and horror that is Slaanesh. When you really start getting past, what is too often, I think, the leather and silliness of Slaanesh, down to what would it really be? It is this painful
Our
dichotomy.
episode that we did on each of the 4 chaos gods, and Justin, Slaanesh is not really my thing, but man, when we did that episode, I was like, oh, I see how cool this is. It really did change.
Taste.
It really did change my opinion on just I thought it was one of the more interesting of the 4.
It is so much more nuanced. Earlier I cracked the joke that, chaos holds all possibilities, but that aspect of Slaanesh is the really beautifully insidious part of it. Is it's those possibilities. It's that what if. And I think in a lot of ways, Tzeentch captures that same sort of vibe. What if?
In a different way.
Yeah, it's
obviously,
very different.
Pleasure and pain is kind of the main
But
know,
that's
impulses.
not it. Like, that's
But
not the whole thing. Yeah.
I mean, it's the prince of pleasure and pain. Like those are.
I think it's
but
the
there's
easiest.
excess.
I think
it's
it's the
excess.
easiest to visually display.
Yeah.
Sure.
In models and stuff, right? It's the most horrifying
Sure.
display you can show. But like, what about the person like is the excess eater or the excess,
Right.
of wealth chasing?
I hope we see, because it seems like with the AOS releases that are coming out soon, like they're still focused on that, but
Yeah.
it'll be cool to see what they do with the 40K and for his children.
Yeah, there is that excess and that complexity. Even though she is this dancing herald, it seems silly.
Yep.
But then once you get past like that to like, so how did that happen? Like, why is she cursed? Why is she banished? Why is she?
Yeah.
It gets really complicated really fast. And I think, there's a lot of that's easy to relate to, of the like, man, I just thought this game was funny and now I have an entire room dedicated to it. And, man, it's just a kill
Talk
team.
about excess. Yeah,
Can we not go there?
I can only pack up 2 of my armies in case there's a fire.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, like I said, extra scoop of excess. Yes, please.
All right, Justin, who did you pick this go around?
Look upon me and know that I can slay you at will. You have no defense save one, to look into the darkness at the back of your own mind. There you will find Father Nurgle waiting to offer you life in return for your submission. Deny him and you are mine. Typhus the Traveler, the Herald of Nurgle, everybody's favorite pox-bringing, Terminus-esque, boat-riding slayer of planets.
Yep.
Honestly, before finishing The Buried Dagger, I always thought Typhus was cool. But after finishing that book, I was like, ooh.
He's a jerk.
He's a jerk. And I like jerks in my 40K books. And like the guys that are responsible for where everything is now and stuff.
He's one of them.
Oh, he's very much one of them. And like even from I didn't realize, and I know his lore has been retconned a few times. Like initially he was he was psyker heavy, and then they kind of retconned that to him being like dabbling in sorcery. But where he stands is
Fifth edition, he was a pretty powerful psyker.
Yeah, but even in the lore, like they've kind of they've changed his back to the heresy lore of kind of his beginnings, and where it is now is that he was a child of Barbarous, and he was a half breed, which I found was super cool with the kind of human creepy psychic overlords of Barbarous, which I thought was super cool. So like from the beginnings, right? Like he was kind of like predestined to be this nurgly boy, and had psychic powers innately. Like he would look at plants and they would wither, and had all these kind of subtle abilities. And then of course Mortarion, the dichotomy of like Mortarion and him, like because Mortarion was kind of until the end trying to fight off this whole Nurgle thing, but
he wasn't a fan of the Emperor, and he was definitely sided with
stole his glory, man.
with Chaos,
Stole his glory,
but
saved his life, but stole his glory.
But the point you're making though is he wasn't about like, oh, I'm just going to be a total Chaos, Primarch. He was just like, I'm a Primarch that's sided with this group.
Yep.
Until this point.
I think one of my favorite things as an outside observer of the Horus Heresy evolving narrative and expanding narrative is that we get this glimpse of these tragic villains and then these horrific villains. The ones that you're like, no, that dude's bad.
From the get-go.
You're like, that person's got problems. And I like that Typhus kind of falls into that. Like
he does.
This is a bad guy.
He does.
This isn't
and
like,
I didn't
it's kind of too
realize,
bad, Magnus. You're like, no, Typhus, bad guy.
And I didn't realize, like they kind of set it up a little bit before, and you kind of saw that he was doing his own thing.
Yeah.
But until the Buried Dagger, like I didn't realize he's responsible for the fall of
Right.
Mortarion. Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
I knew Mortarion wound up on a ship, and then Nurgle kind of had infected everybody and gave him a choice, but no, it was really
Typhon.
He's the equivalent of what's
Lorgar?
his name? Lorgar, the one that
Erebus.
yeah. He's the Erebus of the Death Guard, is what he really is. Like
I mean, from the beginning, like even before
he tricked Typhus into this fall.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
And he's always had that grandfather Nurgle talking to him. You can just tell by reading about him. Like from the beginning, this guy was meant to be what he became.
Yeah.
And like you said, he it's not really tragic. Like that was all part of of
A plan.
quote unquote his plan.
Right.
Yeah.
So fast forward to now, and he's just fully embraced Nurgle. I mean, he's so all about giving the gifts of grandfather Nurgle to the point where like he thinks that Mortarion isn't fighting the Long War well enough. Like he's the one that's out there on the front lines leading this plague fleet. He's been like joined with that demon Gurgrol or whatever the hell his name is. Like the Terminus freaking gene is inside of him. His body's bloated and flies. Like he doesn't have a body. It's just armor and flies. Basically,
he has a destroyer hive on his back.
The
right?
destroyer hive.
Yeah.
Yep. And he just goes planet to planet, just doing horrible, horrible things, and really all about furthering Nurgle's cause, like in any way possible. Like he's been a busy boy over the last 10,000 years. Yeah. And just cool, man. He's a really cool character and just evil. I love it.
Nice. My pick is, again, sticking with my Tzeentch theme. Yes. One of my other favorites, Karos Fate Weaver, the Oracle of Tzeentch. So many of you have seen the Lord of Change model. This is the two-headed Lord of Change version of that, thrown into the Well of Eternity, which is at the heart of the impossible fortress in Tzeentch's realm. Tzeentch was afraid of what was in this well. Like he wanted to know what was in its depths, but he was afraid that even if he were to enter that, he may not be able to come back out and would be destroyed. And so he basically grabbed his vizier, who was a Lord of Change, and tossed him in the well to see what would happen and see if he'd come back. And he does come back, but he comes back with his long neck split into two halves with another head on top of the other neck and aged, even for like a creature, a demon such as he's like aged and kind of decrepit at that point. And he has two heads. He has one that kind of sees the future and all possible futures, and the other one sees like the infinite past and all that. And so, but he's never in the present is the problem. So he doesn't have like the ability. So this is why although he's decent in combat, like he's not super good in combat because sometimes the future head can't see things coming fast.
He's a terrible driver, is what you're saying.
Right. So, two heads, one which sees and visions of all possible futures, the other which witnesses the entirety of the past. So he's just an incredible character. I've always liked this character since the first time I saw him, which was actually at what's the convention we go to in California? We used to go to in California. KublaCon. No, not even KublaCon. DundraCon, where I played for the first time against with the orcs. Scott. Thank you. God, I'm glad you're here. So, but that was the first time I ever saw this character on a table, and I was like, oh, that's a really interesting looking model. And so I kind of learned a little bit about it. There's some really cool things about this character that I dig, right? So he's still the kind of right hand of Tzeentch and like the vizier of Tzeentch. And, he's constantly telling Tzeentch, like, what are the possibilities of the future and compare those with the possibilities of the past. And this is the line I liked. 9 times 9 Lords of Change record every word the Fate Weaver utters so that Tzeentch's understanding of eternity comes even closer. So,
wow.
That's awesome. So, like, this guy has 9 times 9 Lords of Change that are just there to document what he says. He's the right hand of Tzeentch, as I said, and he is only sent out at the most important battles. So, like at the moments where the plans or the cusp of change is on a pinpoint, that's when he arrives and sways things towards Tzeentch's favor. So, and also he wields the Staff of Tomorrow, which is a staff that was constructed by him and imbued with the arcane essence of rival Lords of Change. And it's wrought from change fire and saturated with prophetic visions that he glimpsed in the Well of Eternity. And so it's the foundation, this staff, and if you see the model, we'll talk about it later, upon which
rests an artifact known as Kairos's Tome of Destiny. And this is a book that records what his heads proclaim, and they mix the insights with the past. And so as he talks, the new text is scribed on the pages and kind of morphs and rewrites itself every time events unfold. And so if you were to look upon these pages, they would drive you mad and all that. But his touch can turn you to into spawns and those kinds of things. So he's just a freaking great character.
A little bit of Cthulhu in that little rascal.
Yeah. A little bit, but mostly just the sorcery involved in the pure magic of this creature is really fascinating.
He is the Skeksis of the Lords of Change.
Yeah.
He is the,
for sure.
And I've
just needed to make sure that car wasn't
car,
going to
yeah.
hit my house. I
Wow.
swear, every time we hear people drive too fast up this road.
clearly.
Anyway.
Of all the greater demons, each god has their marquee greater demon. I think his story is the coolest for sure.
That is
I
really
grabbed
cool.
Scarbrand last time,
Yeah.
because just raw
Anger.
Scarbrandness,
Raw anger.
the rage. But quality of interesting story. I agree. I
There's
think,
a lot there to unpack.
yeah, he's super cool.
For sure. So let's talk about the models for these guys, Jody. The dancer.
Yeah. So the mask has two versions. The old one was released in 2008, so it's not that old.
No, it really isn't.
And it's actually a pretty nice model. I have one. It's all painted up. When it was in metal, it was pretty brutal because she has this double-sided staff that doesn't feature in her lore really at all, other than
Kind of like a Harlequin kind of thing.
Yeah.
One side's happy, one side's
yeah, it has the
Sad face and happy.
humor, drama, and comedy.
Yeah.
Two sides of the theater mask, and as she turns them, it's her two different masks. The original one is a little bit heavy on the demonic end and very short on the beauty end. It is this kind of savage being. It was a metal model that was, if you didn't have some really fine pinning skills, was going to really test your frustration and ability. For the time, it was fine. Now, it didn't hold up with is it Juan Diaz that did the demonettes of the mid-90s that
Sure
were
is.
Yep.
really just beautiful and lithe and really wonderful and evocative sculpts. It isn't in line with that, but it's also not in line really with the current plastics. It's somewhere in between.
Yeah, I agree.
But in 2019, at the very beginning of 2019, a new version of this model was released in plastic, and it is marvelous. And it has a little more of a regal look. I feel like it
Still has the staff.
still has the
Or it's
staff.
not really, it's more of a rod.
Right.
Yeah.
And with the drama and comedy masks on each end, though they are much more twisted looking in this version. And shout out to Vince Ventrilla, who did a fantastic version. He's been painting all kinds of chaos demons, and he did a photo of his version that is just beautiful, that shows that if you look at the model straight towards the mask, when you build the model, it actually lines up and covers her face.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it was that's a really clever little, we were talking about the way these models fit together and the way they're assembled now, that if you're looking straight ahead at her face, the mask actually covers her face, which is really a nice touch. This new one is so much more dynamic, looks like she's dancing, has kind of a foppish Renaissance, the what is they call that? The fishbone collar with the kind of what you classically see around Shakespeare's neck, the frills. She's got that and is just really a fantastic model. It's been on my short list of when I return to my Slaneshi Demon project. I will definitely be getting the updated
That's one of the
version.
few models of the new Slanesh stuff I haven't picked up, because I own a couple of the old ones, and I was looking at them. I'm like, do I really need her? But yeah, I need her.
Well, and the great thing is it would be very easy to remove the rod from the old one, and now you got a cool herald.
That's true.
To downgrade the old one to a
that's a good
herald,
point.
just clip those.
That's a really good
off.
point.
Because it is kind of her signature item, even though it's funny enough, as we'll talk about shortly, doesn't feature in the rules. So yeah, new 2019 version, a couple years old now, almost a couple of years old, is really fantastic. It's got this beautiful headdress and still has this evil scowl, but is much more kind of accessible in its facial appearance.
Right.
Whereas the rest of the body is a little more twisted, but.
I think the original looks like it's directing a downtown parade, and the new one looks like it's actually dancing.
Can't unsee that now. Thank you.
Yep.
But I don't disagree.
Toss that up in the
Yeah,
air.
it really
right?
does.
Which probably does. It's dancing.
Yeah, a part of the deal.
All right. What about you, Justin?
Yeah, good old Typhon / Typhus. The original model is super well done. Dig it. Just kind of tiny. You know what I mean? Like the details are good.
Yeah, it to scale now doesn't match.
No.
But iconic for its time.
For longest time, my favorite model.
Yeah.
Loved painting him.
Yeah, I demoted him down to like a Terminator champion before the new Blightlord Terminators came out. And the new model, I got to say, is it's really well sculpted. Like the details are there. The pose is silly. He looks like he's doing a disco dance.
As Campbell from 40K Badcast says, he's holding up his scythe and he's kind of like, "Hey guys, I got a scythe.
Look what I got.
Check this out."
Yeah, this thing's been dipped in the Nurgle pond. Yeah, I don't know, man, because you look at that Forge World model too.
So he actually has 3 models.
He actually has 3 models. Thank you for reminding me. And the Forge World model's just amazing.
Yeah.
Really good.
It's not quite as chaosified yet.
Sure.
Right?
Like,
He's-
I mean,
he's
all
on
the
his
elements
way
are there.
there.
He even has like the little tubes on the back, like
Yep.
the little beginning of the Destroyer Hive. But like, yeah, I mean, that's for 30K, phenomenal. That model, Typhon, because that's when he's still Typhon. He's not Typhus. yet.
Correct.
Phenomenal. The new model, man, I really would have liked to see him bigger. Like I look at the artwork for Typhus and him like holding up an Imperial Guardsman, and he's just massive. Like he's just this big, bloated. Like I would have liked to see him almost like ogre sized.
Yeah.
In my mind,
I could see that.
you know, just bloated, massive, scary, and not doing a disco dance.
The pose is a real. I was so looking forward to the update of this model, and then when it came out, I was like, "Oh."
Yeah.
Now that being said,
I know where you're going with this.
Maybe you do. I'm not going to talk about converting.
Okay. I don't know where you're going
Sort
with
of.
this.
Okay, one of the Terminators, the Blightlord Terminators,
Yeah.
has a very similar pose to the old Typhus.
Yeah.
He's holding the scythe out kind of in front of him. You could probably combine a couple models to get very close to it.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see when I get around to them.
But what have we seen?
What we have seen is people take that scythe and put it in the other hand, and they have him holding up like some unfortunate victim.
Usually a Tau.
Usually a Tau.
Or an IG
Well, because
guy.
there's a piece of artwork in the Death Guard book of him holding a Tau individual.
The first guy to do that, genius.
Yeah. I mean,
Whoever it was, genius.
yeah. Because the original pose, I wish they could have just done that original pose.
Yep.
With the new model and
Yep.
had him just hold. It's simple. He's just like, he's the Reaper of Men. He's got his scythe. He's ready to go.
And that's the beauty of it. Like, and I think that's the beauty of the Terminator Chaplain I was talking about earlier. Like, the pose is simple, but states something,
Sure.
right? It's not super dynamic. He's kind of stepping forward with his scythe, and that's it. Okay, cool, believable.
Yeah. Sometimes less is more.
Yeah,
And,
and in those 2 cases, that is the case.
Funny enough, this newer one also has a bit of the single plane, the 2-dimensional problem.
Very much
It's
so.
on a single pane, which is funny because so many of these plastic models now are so dynamic. The Masked new model, I mean, she has this full rotation of like she's turning.
Totally.
And it's funny that, in a weird way, I feel like he kind of got
Downgraded.
he was a year early
Yeah.
in the like plastic. Somebody had to go first. And it's just unfortunate that Typhus went from this like, holy cow, iconic model to this current one I love the hesitation because there's nothing wrong. It's just not as good.
It's just a slightly disappointing.
Right. It's like, oh, you changed a thing that you didn't need to change.
All
Like,
you had to do was just upscale.
just bigger. Just take
Yeah,
the old
it
one,
would have
make
been
bigger.
I would have been like sold. This is the model. The original Typhus model is the one that got me into Death Guard. Like I saw it in the
it's a quality sculpt.
in
good.
the White Dwarf battle report one time, and I was like, holy cow, that guy's awesome. And that was that. So yeah.
Yeah, I give that sculpt about a 6 out of 10. Like again, it's not poorly done. It's just a pose, and I would have liked to see him be just beefy.
And you can kit bash some stuff there and make them a little more interesting.
And
so.
I'm not going to say I didn't buy him because I own him.
Yeah.
But we'll
Have
see.
you not assembled him yet?
I haven't. I think I started, but he's not fully done yet. 'Cause
Okay.
I hit that area where I was like,
Hey,
where
let
do
me
I go?
Let me ask you a question about that. When you start assembling a model and then suddenly you're like, hold on, I'm not there. Or I want to do some other things with this, but I'm not going to do it right now.
Mm-hmm.
How do you store that model from that point forward so that you don't wind up like with missing components or something? Do you just put it?
I'd put it in a Ziploc baggie.
You do a Ziploc.
Usually, yeah, a Ziploc baggie, and then all my armies I just have in either like a Tupperware tote or a box of some kind. I try to keep all of my factions
Ziploc
together.
baggie is a pretty simple and elegant solution for that.
Ziploc baggie, or like if you have those little, bait tackle holders, those are good. But I find with characters, especially with like the new CAD design, where characters have like you said, the hair bits and spindly little things, you just got to put those in a baggie. You're gonna lose stuff. You know?
Yeah, totally.
And then label your boxes so you don't lose hobby progress. Which
that's smart.
Foreshadowing next episode, we might cover some of these little tippies.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Ziplocs.
Cool. Yeah,
technical.
And I go right
wish
back.
I thought of that.
I go right back in the box. Like I'll Ziploc it and then just throw it in the. Especially the characters now come in those really small boxes.
Yeah.
So while I was working on my Warpsmith, it was in a Ziploc in the Pharaoh's box the whole time because there are some real small parts on that.
And if you have cats, don't leave those sub-assemblies on your hobby table.
No.
Just don't do that.
Carl, you
So let's talk
about Fate Weaver.
Let's talk about the Fate Weaver model, because as I just mentioned, when I was playing at DungeonCon, and I first saw the model, I saw the first version of the model, which was about Demon Prince size, metal, 2 heads, holding a staff in one hand, kind of propped up with the book on it. Just a beautiful model. Like I still love that sculpt to this day. I think very well done. It's avian in its caricature. One head's higher than the other. It has a loincloth and cloths hanging on its head. And
the
stuff.
tattered wings on it are really interesting too.
So good. So good. And so for the longest time, really wanted that model. And we, at the time, we advertised on the show. There was a painter that was advertising on the show for doing, all he would really do is like character models, like your
I remember that.
Yeah. And so one of the things he was going to do is he was going to paint my Fate Weaver for me. And as happens to a lot of painters that try to advertise on this show, he got broken because he couldn't keep up with the amount of requests that came his way. And that guy never really got painted. And finally, he just sent him back to me, not completely painted. But in the meantime, before I went back to him, GW finally released the new Lord of Change.
Yeah.
And my God.
That's a little bit of an upgrade.
Holy cow. 2.5 times as tall.
Yeah.
Beautifully sculpted. Like so much detail on the thing. I've heard people say there's too much detail on a model. I'm like, okay. You can over detail a model. We talked about Harkon World Claimer. But this is a model I don't feel is over detailed.
You got a lot of landscape on that model. There's some room to add some doodads. And
there is a lot to present on there.
It's going to having painted not Kairos, but a Fate, a Lord of Change, you're signing up for some time on that model.
And this was back also Creature Caster at the time. If you remember, Justin, in their first range of models, one of the ones they had was a kind of Zeech model.
Right.
And I was very excited about that one because that was before GWs came out.
And
GWs came out, and I was just like, oh. And Creature Caster had run into delays at that point, and so it didn't come out quite soon enough. And then, man, when that new model came out, so now you had a Lord of Change that had an alternate build that could build Karo's Fate Weaver on it. From the moment I saw that model, I knew that was going to be for me. And so I own it. It was painted up by Dave Paints. It's beautiful looking. I own another Lord of Change as well, which is beautiful.
I don't think I realized you had both.
Yep.
I don't know. Yeah, I didn't realize you had him painted.
Actually, I want 2 more because there's a formation in
Age of
Sigmar that allows you.
I know the one.
And I don't know if it's good. I just love the concept.
I'm heading that way. Hey, when you do that, I'll do the corn one because I've already got 2 Bloodthirsters. So I want to finish out the Scar brand and the one I don't have.
You guys should both do some Creature Caster sculpts for that little project. There's some. Have you seen some of the Zeechian Creature Caster things?
Pretty exceptional.
They're shenanigan crazy.
Because I looked, and so we'll have to look later. But anyway, let's get back to this model. So now you have this new model, which is a modification of the Lord of Change. It blew my mind. It's much larger. It is the Fate Weaver has the 2 heads that just look incredible. His staff looks incredible. The Staff of Tomorrow looks great. Quite frankly, this again is probably one of GW's best models in my mind. Just absolutely took the concept and envisioned it perfectly And I just love this model. I love having him out on the table. He's hard as hell to hide because he's so big with the wings and stuff, but it is exactly what I wanted.
Easier with new terrain rules.
Sure. But it is exactly what I wanted.
I love the like the undead vulture head. Like it's almost skeletal.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, he's supposed to be a
cool.
little kind
Yeah.
of decrepit, right? And so as I sent off my demons to be done by Dave Paints, I sent him also the old version of Karos Fate Weaver, and I was like, yep, going to use him as a Demon Prince of Tzeentch whenever I need a Demon Prince of Tzeentch. So I think it works out perfectly.
One little note you have in here that you didn't touch on, though, is that the original was metal, and they did a fine cast. This is one where I go, no, you want the fine cast one. He is very, very forward
Fiddly.
heavy, top heavy. The old Kairos is. Mine is metal, and mine has. And
Assuming
for those of
you
you
get
who
a good cast of the fine cast one.
he's
which
big
I
enough
have.
though that he'll be okay.
He is.
Like, and there's the details aren't so tiny, and there's enough of them that you should be all right.
It's
for
just
any of
in
you
metal,
who remember metal models, you'll know there's the clicky clack or the internal wobbly model syndrome where something's pinned but it doesn't break.
Yeah.
And it just like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, sure, well.
Yeah. So for those of you who know, my Fate Weaver does this in 3 different parts, which I always get a kick out of because I'm like, he's old and rickety. Like
rickety.
he wobbles on his base, his arm wobbles with one of his head's wobble. Like there's all these parts and they're like, dude, this thing's going to fall apart. And I'm like, yeah, it's been
At
like
some
that
point.
for years. Yeah. So he's just old and wobbly. He's an old chicken.
I gotta say though, missed opportunity. I would have liked to have seen like a big beard of feathers on those heads. You know,
You can cut off scar brands.
All right, well, let's talk about the rules for these characters. And Jody, why don't you talk about the mask?
Heck yeah. Much more excited to talk about this one. So she's movement 8. She's weapon skill, ballistic skill 2. She's strength 4, which is for a demonette spinoff, is pretty cool. Yep. She's toughness 3 because Slanesh unit, not a great big one. That's what you get. 4 wounds, 5 attacks, leadership 8, 6 up save, 5+ invul because, again, she's a demon.
Yep.
Her only weapon is her serrated claws. So strength 4, AP -2, 2 damage. On a wound roll of 6, she is AP -4.
It's like the old Rend.
That is, yeah, and that's
a pretty Slaneshi standard.
right. That's
thing.
what the demonettes do.
Yep.
It's the herald version of what the demonettes do.
Right.
Being that she's a Slaneshi demon, she has Quicksilver swiftness, which means she's always fights first. And even if you charge her, then they will alternate with you. These Quicksilver units, which is cool. I was thinking like in 9th, I'm like, is that better or less good? It's still a great ability, but I was like, actually, it seems like in 9th with the little twist to where the opponent gets to go.
Yeah.
It's like, that feels like it's a little bit better now than it was. Very minimally, but still. All right, so let's get into the stuff that makes her her. Eternal Dance. Within 1 inch in the fight phase, she gets +1 to hit versus a target unit. Really important here. She gives a +1 to hit because she's beguiling, right? This Eternal Dance is beguiling to a unit she's selected that's within 1 inch. So you get a +1 to hit them. Mm-hmm. This is not specific to any keywords.
So it's not like against Imperium.
She gives the +1 to other Slaneshi units.
Oh, interesting.
It's any unit. She picks a unit and now they are easier to hit in close
interesting.
combat,
Okay.
which we'll come back to is also a great narrative beat with her. She has the Locus
I
of
see what you did there with the beat thing.
Thank you. All right. Locus of Beguilement, 6 inch range in the fight phase. She then gives a -1 to hit to demonette units, of which she is one. So she makes demonettes harder to kill, which when you're only, 1 wound, toughness 3 with a 5 up invul, a -1 to hit is really important. Also, presumably stacking that with the fact that the demonettes will fight you first in most cases.
Right.
Really is pretty cool. And then she has Dazzling Acrobatics, and this, we all know this version of this skill. She can advance or fall back and then charge. Yeah. Now she
for a melee
doesn't
unit.
give that to other units.
So
she does
her.
that. She for those of you who are real old school, she dances across spear tops like war dancers of old and jumps in and out of combat and jumps back in. All right.
Or Harlequins.
Whatever. She hates Harlequins.
Well, Harlequins are space war dancers, so same thing.
There. We'll talk about Harlequins later. All right. So would you use her? Like, that's her rules. Is she cool? She reigns in at 5 She went up to 5 power level in the current update. I didn't look at her points because I don't care. Would I use her? It's tricky. So if I'm going to field an all Slaaneshi demon force, yes, because giving those demonettes the means to stay alive a little bit longer, they're not going to get there any better because they're going to get shot up. But presumably you're going to take that large blob of demonettes because that's how you kind of have to field.
Is she an HQ or an elite? She's an elite, right?
No, she's an HQ.
Okay.
Pretty positive. Carl can double check for me.
Okay.
So in that mono demon build, yeah, I feel like that ability to make that large unit of demonettes that you're going to want to take that much more survivable in close combat, which is where they need to be, is pretty darn appealing. The other layer is that if there's another herald out there that's also supplementing her, the heralds give +1 strength. So then stacking the other herald's +1 strength on top of hers and adding that to a huge unit of demonettes, now you're into that lot of eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, demon armies, when you field them mono god, you're in for a penny in for a pound.
Yep.
If
It's
you're
hard.
going to do that narrative thing, which is how really the demon book is built, generally speaking.
Well, I mean, even like when you look at the layout of the demon book, it's not even like, oh, here's all the HQs. It's like, no, here's all the Slaanesh units.
Right.
Here's the HQs of Slaanesh units. She is the HQ.
Yeah.
Here's all the Nurgle units. Here's all,
Right.
So it's literally broken up like that.
So once you're in for the penny, in for the pound, yeah, she's going to make those demonettes a heck of a lot better. Now, where she gets really interesting, though, to consider is what if you do go with the mixed, the chaos soup, or you go with a mixed chaos god army. Last episode when we did this, Brian talked about Be'lakor, and that Be'lakor is fascinating in that
I love him.
he is the way, or at least should be the way, that you field the undivided demon host.
Yeah.
At that point, because of her ability being not specific and thinking about giving a +1 to hit versus unit
To
for
something
blood
else?
letters.
Yeah.
Holy crap. +1 to hit blood
That's
letters
interesting, yeah.
get real interesting all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So she's really fascinating in that she is kind of demanding that you give an awful lot, that you invest heavily in her if you're going to field her.
Yeah.
How Slaaneshi is that? About as Slaaneshi as it gets, right?
Yeah.
The pound of flesh, as it were. Like, no, you're going to pay your points for her. It's not just her, but you're going to have to build around her to really maximize her. But if you do that, I'm like, man, that's a lot of really good stuff, taking what that army wants to do and maximizing it in a list that doesn't offer you a ton of options for doing that sort of thing. So, would I field her? I mean, I've got the model, and I don't field named characters very often. Also, narratively, she is somebody that, like, where Kairos is rarely going to hit the table narratively.
Yeah. Yep.
The mask jumps around from place to place. She shows
And
up
I'll be
where
honest,
she will.
I maybe have used Kairos twice.
Right. Because for me, that is a thing. Like, I think about that. I'm like, man, this thing shouldn't be hitting the table very much. It's this unless the narrative says, like, no, she does.
Yeah,
She's exiled. She bounces around wherever the heck she wants.
She can't stop moving.
She can't stop moving. She's a girl on the move. She got places to be and things to do and heads to pinch off. So I don't know. I think she's a fascinating character. And again, it's a named character that I own and do use when I field my Slaaneshi army because she has a home. So, pretty interesting as those named heralds tend to be. They live in these very strange little places in the game.
Pretty niche. And then you look at them, you're like, should I? Shouldn't? But you play narratively, you're good. Take it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the...
So
throw your
Justin,
JBL speaker on, throw some oons music on, and just
see a little more 9 Inch Nails, Tool, Perfect Circle.
there you go.
Yeah, some dark wave.
There
Perfect.
we go.
what about the Herald of Nurgle here?
Good old Herald of Nurgle. I'd say his rules, I'll start out by saying his rules do match his lore well enough, because as he's basically a traditional Lord of Contagion. He's got a little bit better weapon, his master crafted Man Reaper. It's flat 3 damage instead of D3, which is pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, he's got 4 attacks.
There's nothing that puts fear into other characters or sometimes even vehicles when you're like, oh, and by the way, this does 3 points of damage.
Yeah, the
for every
flat damage, especially when you can, because he also is a psyker, so he can use some spells to buff himself. And with the Psychic Awakening, there's a myriad of different stratagems that he can use to really do some horrible things. He's good in combat, like no doubt. And the flat 3 damage with the neg 3, that's good. He's slow. He can deep strike.
Yeah.
But I don't think you're going to be deep striking this guy.
When you say slow, what's
movement 4.
Yeah, that's pretty slow.
And he's got Cataphracti armor as well.
That's why he's movement 4.
Yeah, he's got Cataphracti, so he's subtracting a dice on the fallback and advance. But where you really want him, again, much like Fabius, you want to plant him in the middle of your battle line, backed up by a bunch of Zombros, much to Jody's horror. About 90 of them at least, if I was to use this guy.
Thematic, I'm cool with it. I'll allow it.
Yeah.
I'll allow it.
Well, no, he would only be around at least 60. And then the other 30 would be climbing up through the grounds behind your battle lines. He'd be surrounded by Zombros because he is the bringer of zombies. So naturally, he's got his Host of the Destroyer Hive ability, which gives +1 strength and toughness for Poxwalkers.
That's huge.
Not wholly within 7, just within 7. So they can just, one little guy from a unit can be toe in.
One little dangle bro.
One little dangle bro. And then he just spreads that love.
Dangle bro.
And yeah, the dangle bro.
Cool.
Kind of like the thing hanging off your dreadnought.
And cut off.
Yeah. So
it's not Nurgle.
Kind of cool, and then he got some little buffed rules too from the Psychic Awakening as far as the different pox companies and stuff. Nothing like super groundbreaking. I mean, you can take him in different pox companies, but it just feels weird to not have him leading the first company, which he is definitely in charge of. But he's definitely a buff character. He can slap your face, but he really buffs units nearby, and he generates, because he has to take that Warlord trait that generates mortal wounds.
Yeah.
And then he has another ability where friendly units within 7 of him, units within 1 inch of that unit, get mortal wounds. So he's just kind of dealing out all this pox and plague as he kind of moves through the battlefield.
I love the 7-inch.
Yeah, there's
very thematic.
They definitely do the 7 thing in the Death Guard book. Not quite as bad as Space Wolves with the wolfy wolf helms, but they do the 7. 165 points. I've never looked at his rules and been like, I really want to take him, especially because the model I'm not super thrilled about, but it would be fun to do like a Halloween brawl zombie game, right?
Amen.
Of just like, and I've got all those zombicide zombies painted up too.
Yep.
And, just have a bunch of zombies and Adidas jumpsuits running around. Be fun.
I will say that point about Typhus is probably the highest praise I can dish out. Is I don't know that there's a character that more makes me want to run a special scenario to involve him.
Right.
And that's been for years, that as long as Typhus has had the Poxwalker, the Plague Zombie special rules, it's, I want to fight against Typhus and 100 plagues. I want to do that. Give me I want to
win or lose. How many zombies can you kill?
Right. And I mean, how cool is that all of his rules are specifically tied in to create that effect. So like you said right off the bat, do his rules match his narrative? Yeah, absolutely.
They totally
because you
do.
want to play the narrative.
Yeah.
I kind of would have liked to see him have a little bit like a stat or two different from the traditional Lord of Contagion that came in the starter set. Again, whether it was an extra wound or just something, I don't know. It is nice that he is a 2 spellcaster lad. I believe he's the only 2 spellcaster in the book
for
Death Guard.
Nurgle.
Yeah, because the DM Prince is only obviously Mortarion.
Yeah,
but he's a lot of points. But he can cast 2 and dispel 1, which is good because the Nurgle lore is pretty awesome.
Pretty good.
So
in 5th edition, I used to run him a lot, and one of the problems is at the time you had a rule called Fearless, right, which they ignored morale tests and all that. But the problem was if you grouped him with another group, because at the time you had independent characters, hence the name of the show, that could join other units, and he was one such character. The problem was he would lose his Fearless in that case. He didn't provide that to the rest of the unit.
Sure.
So, but I would still run him with a group of 5 Terminators, which I called the Blessed, and just race forward a Land Raider, dump him out. He'd psychic blast some stuff and then just, leap in. And man, I tore up a lot of units with that.
Oh, what a feeling. I remember those
great.
days.
It was great.
The other nice thing too, he does have, which is kind of cool. The range is super short, but he does have a pistol, quote unquote, which is his angry flies.
Yeah, that's the Destroyer Hive.
The Destroyer Hive, yeah, which is 2d6 shots.
Yep.
They always hit on 5s. So even in Overwatch, the chances of somebody charging you from
and you spending the point for Overwatch 4
and
the
spending,
flies.
you're never gonna do that. But just that extra 2d6 chip damage that he can jump, into a unit or put into a unit he's fighting. Neg 3 AP.
Yeah, I mean,
Strength 4.
It's not bad, and I think it's intended to be like a kind of aura effect.
Yeah.
It's kind of around
Right.
him with the flies attacking people and stuff. It's pretty cool.
And people out there, don't forget to shoot your pistols in combat.
Yeah, please
it's
Super
helpful.
Super duper helpful.
Killing guys helps.
Yeah.
So so Fate Weaver. So here you have, he's effectively a Lord of Change plus. So he has a lot of options. He is a huge monstrous creature, so he has those law of diminishing returns. As he takes wounds,
he gets a little weaker.
He gets a little weaker. But when he starts out, he is starting out with 16 wounds, so he is no joke. And he has a 6-up, 4-up save because he has ephemeral form. So he takes his +1 to his invuln save there. So at a 4-up save, which I seem to be able to roll, that's 50% of the time that you're rolling a 4+.
They're with you or they ain't.
Yeah, he is able to withstand quite a bit. And the great thing about that is when he's in that 9 to 16 range of wounds, he moves 12, he gets 5 attacks, although really you're going to be using his psychic stuff. And speaking of that, he's +2 on his psychic powers
So
at that
great.
point. So not only does he have 3 psychic powers, he can deny 3 psychic powers. He also has Smite, plus he knows all of the psychic powers from the Tzeentch discipline, which gives him a lot of flexibility. And that +2 means those powers that are like a 9 or something like that are now suddenly within reach fairly reasonably.
Yep.
And plus his Smite is going to typically bounce up to the higher level Smite if you're rolling anything decent. So
Throughout a whole game for sure, like at least 1 or 2 of those.
Yep. So I really enjoy that aspect of him. The staff in combat. So he's weapon skill 3+, which kind of represents the fact that he's not in the moment, right? He's not a 2+. He could have been a 2+, but the reality is he's not a regular Lord of Change's weapon skill 2+. He's not necessarily there at that moment. So he gets a 3+, but he is also the staff gives him +2 to strength. So now he's hitting at strength 8 on these, and this staff does a d6 wounds per hit. So
It's legit.
and he's getting 5 attacks with that staff at a d6 wounds. Now a Lord of Change can take a very similar. They take a staff as well, which kind of does a very similar thing. Also, if he kills a character with the staff, it becomes a spawn. So under your control, which is awesome. And I've actually done it a couple times now. It's just
so
a load of
satisfying.
fun. It's
I was
just a
going to
load
say,
of fun.
have those models ready though, right? You got to
Yep.
have that model.
Yep, and I have them specifically for that.
That's awesome.
Well, there's also the psychic power that can turn characters into spawns.
Yes, so you can hit that.
Yeah,
and
you can start being a real
get
jerk
a
about
real
it.
jerk.
It's pretty awesome.
He also has an ability called Foretell, which means if you have Battleforge armies, you get a D3 command points added to your thing.
That's huge.
That's nice.
That even much better now.
Yeah. Also, the Staff of Tomorrow's -3 AP, D6 damage per hit. Sling characters become. Yeah, talked about that already. So, do I like him and would I use him? I have used him. In a lot of cases, you're better off just taking a Lord of Change. Points wise, you're going to save some points. You're going to save some power level for Lord of Change and effectively get what you're looking for out of that. The additional psychic abilities are nice, but in that army, you're also throwing out so many psychic powers that you're not duplicating psychic powers. So you find him kind of getting into a point where he's like, well, I'm going to smite and do 2 other things that I don't need over here. There have been times where I've literally just said, nope, no need. One thing I will add is, and I don't know if I mentioned it before, but this character is one of the few, well, there are several, but mostly in the demons range that are also transferable over to Age of Sigmar, as we just talked about. And so he's represented as Kairos Fate Weaver in Age of Sigmar as well, and the history is all tied together. It's kind of the same thing. And I find that really, really fun and fascinating. And by the way, Lords of Change and Kairos Fate Weaver in Age of Sigmar are amazing because, and I know it's a 40K podcast, but I've only played them once in Age of Sigmar, and my opponent used endless spells against me, and they're just like, yeah, we just dismissed that endless spell. It's just like...
Yeah, I've heard Tzeentch is pretty scary.
It was just like, yeah, I don't think so.
It's the beauty of playing demons, man. It's the double dip army.
Yeah, I got to tell you though, I think he matches his lore pretty darn well on the table. Yeah. It's really just the points thing. So if you can squeeze out the points, sure. If not, do something else with them. But he's fun to look at on the table too. Yeah. So I like playing him.
Cast 3, deny 3, sold.
Yeah, not too shabby.
Yeah, which in the regular is 2, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
it's an extra
A Lord
one.
of Change is doing 2. So, I mean, the reality is these kinds of armies, the Thousand Suns, the Tzeentch Demons, you're able to deny more than anybody else can really put out for the most part. So it's really just kind of like, okay, I just have the options to deny in a bunch of different locations.
It's the plus that the Lord of Change and Kairos bring to the table that's the awesome part.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And then, as he depreciates in the 5 to 8 wound range, he's moving 8 inches, attacking 3 times, but still has a +1 to that psychic test. So not until he's near his end is he +0.
Right.
But by then you've dealt out a lot of damage. And people, if you can put out 2 of these, like a Kairos and a Lord of Change, I mean, that's 32 wounds among 2 models that are rolling 4-ups to prevent them. And people have other things they're having to deal with too. It really does become problematic. It's
Monster
fun.
Mash.
It's fun.
Monster Mash.
It is.
Yeah. So that's him. So what supplements here, Jody?
So Codex Chaos Demons. Most of these named demon characters show up in the Chaos Demons from 4th edition. That was when they became their own faction, and they had to have some HQs and characters. So that's where she shows up. So 4th, 6th, and 8th, she's in there. The mask is. And then also she shows up in Gathering Storm Part 1, the Fracture of Bael'Tan. She has rules in there as well, which are the same as the 8th ed rules.
Yep. And Justin?
As far as Games Workshop and Forge World are concerned, he's been around for quite a while. Codex 3rd edition, 4th edition, 6th edition, and of course the 8th edition Death Guard book.
Codex,
He also showed up in Index Chaotica, Terminus Est, and Horus Heresy Book 2 Massacre, of course.
Yep.
Warlords of the Dark Millennium, which I've never read.
It's like I think they were short things that were released primarily on PDF. Armin has one too, actually.
Just little snippets.
Yeah, it
Stuff we
was
already
a little
know
bit
and-
of yeah.
And again, like a bunch of White Dwarf, different Index Astartes and all that. And then, of course, recently in the Psychic Awakening War of the Spider, which is funny because both my picks didn't even plan that, but both the picks of
wind up in there.
They wind up in there, and they're Fabius Bill is stealing some things from Typhoid and getting him all angry. So yeah, it's interesting. But
Well, Fate Weaver shows up also. Chaos, same Chaos Demon codexes that your guy shows up in there. Which reminds me, I remember when Demons first came on the scene at 4th edition. It was a pretty exciting time.
Yeah.
Like, people were pretty excited about it. Gathering Storm, Rise of the Primarch. So the 3rd book, he shows up a little bit. He's in Index Chaotica, and he's in the Chaos Battle Tome for Age of Sigmar, Disciples of Tzeentch. And then Black Library examples, Jody.
No.
Again.
Yep.
Well done.
Hell, hey,
Beautiful.
stay in my lane.
Justin.
beautiful.
One of
just
the best
a ton of books.
30K books, by the way, if you haven't read your first one on your list.
The Flight of the Eisenstein. I started it. I need to finish it.
Oh, it is one of the best.
Yeah.
For the longest time, it was considered.
Like I know the
yeah.
brief the synopsis, but yeah, I'll have to go back and finish that. But yeah, Flight of the Eisenstein from James Swallow, The Lion from Gav Thorpe, Cadian Blood.
I have it. Short novel too. It's really
ADB,
thin.
yeah.
He shows up. It's funny because like he's like approaching the planet. They're trying to get some artifact on the planet.
Sure.
Terminus S shows up. He shows up, and the way ADB depicts him is freaking horrifying.
Nice.
He kind of shows up, goes down the planet, but something happens to the artifact, and he's like, "All right, we leave." And then they just leave.
They're like your death is not worth my time.
Yeah, I think he slays a few guys, and then
Yeah,
just like,
a
"All right,
couple.
let's go."
Maybe threw a little vial and just pieced out. Yeah. Of course, Buried Dagger, James Swallow. Love that book. Demonology, which was a short story by Chris Wright. The Unforgiven,
Yeah.
Angels on Caliban,
Angels. Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Dark Imperium.
I absolutely loved him in that.
Yeah.
One of the highlights of that book.
Novel.
Yeah.
Story.
Lantern's Light, which is a short story, probably having something to do with Mortarion.
I would imagine.
Yeah. The First Wall, chapter 12.
That is part of the Siege of Terra series.
Nice.
And he has shown up in that, and he has shown up in Saturnine as well.
Gotta read. So there's so much reading to do. Damn it.
Those are good.
Yeah,
Good,
I'm sure.
good.
I'm sure.
I can't wait for the next one.
And then, of course, Saturnine, part 1, chapter 2.
Yep.
So he's been around a lot.
And mind you, those are at Terra, so that is the Siege of Terra that he is involved in right there.
Fully nurgled.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So Fate Weaver shows up, interesting enough, in the book. It's a Space Marine Battles book actually called Fate Weaver. It's by John French, but it's actually several short stories in that book. And in every book that Fate Weaver's in, he's not really like in it. I mean, he is, but like he's kind of on the periphery, like steering things and stuff. There's never anything told clearly from Fate Weaver's perspective, which would be, I think, insane to try to deliver. And it's not really a thing where like somebody's like, and then they open the door and Fate Weaver's in the room, you know? It's
No, I imagine that would be like trying to simultaneously read Helter Skelter and Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah.
Like, and they're on top of each other through a transparency. That's what that would look like.
Aurelian by Aaron Dembski Bowden also, which is a short story about Lorgar. Quite good. It was a collector's edition book, and he's featured in there as well. And usually it's like a conversation with this creature, like a short one. And then, just kind of, he bounces around several short stories. He's in the Primarch's Anthology, The Crimson King, and Atlas Infernal by Rob Sanders, which is a fantastic book about an Inquisitor. And we actually interviewed Rob Sanders about this a long time ago, Jeff and myself. And Jeff loved this book, and I did too. I was a big fan of it. Great book if you haven't read it.
Nice.
Yeah, great book if you haven't read it. So let's launch into our favorite story about this particular character, and then we'll wrap up. So Jody, let's start with you.
Holy over-the-top hero hammer, here we go. Last time I did Scarbrand. Scarbrand is going to feature again.
You might have missed, this is called Champions of 40K. So,
yeah.
should have just called it Hero Hammer of 40K.
Hero Hammer.
Hero hammer, here we go.
Causer.
Yeah, no, so she, like most demon characters, is going to be subject, so in a disclaimer, subject to the let's just go real big, not small.
Oh, yeah.
So as if that wasn't enough disclaimer, Gathering Storm 2, The Fracture of Beltan.
Yeah, sure. Pick on the dying race.
Yeah, well, here's how that happened. So the mask is central actually to that story, which I thought was great. I was very surprised as I was reading that back when that was happening. So she appeals to Scarbrand, who is also in exile. So she's able to kind of get an audience with him. And once she it's getting real dark, big guy, the sun's getting low, big
Brooklyn
guy.
Nine-Nine?
No.
Okay, never mind.
And so she gets him to agree to a contest between his forces of Khorne and her forces of Slaanesh on the planet of Ursulia. The mask selected Ursulia for the contest because it's actually an Exodite maiden world, and it housed the Obsidian Gate, one of the portals from or into the webway.
Okay.
She knows this all along. But the plan is to use Scarbrand ultimately to break this gate into the webway and allow her access to Beltan, thereby preventing the birth of Ynid, which they could see coming. And Slaanesh knew this is bad news. She's trying to get back in Slaanesh's good graces by breaking in and messing up the whole thing. So in the heat of the middle of the battle, she's doing this dance, and Scarbrand's getting furious as Falcon grav tanks are keep it going, are blasting him. Scarbrand's getting lit up by an entire battalion of fire prisms, and it's just making him angry because Scarbrand smashed.
Right.
So she kind of guides him in his rage to the Obsidian Gate, and she stands up on top and does a somersault. By the way, Brian Harvey suggests a drinking game in the Gathering Storm 2.
Anytime somebody does a flip,
take a drink. You won't get very far into the book.
Nope.
So she does a backflip off of one of the Soul Flayer chariots, which is carrying 3 dead farseers on it. She stands at the top of the gate and takes their soul stones and gulps them down decadently, which then further enrages and draws the fire from the Eldar forces amassing against them. And they further light up Skarbrand. He sees her and he's like, she's not even fighting, which just makes Skarbrand more angry. So he rears back and lashes out at her to smash her. Guess how she avoids getting smashed?
Backflip.
The backflip out of the way.
Backflip out of the way. And his blow lands and crushes and cracks open the obsidian gate, which she immediately slips into. So then Skarbrand is also pulled into the gate, and they're on Bael'Tan, and he's laying siege. So naturally, the forces at Bael'Tan have to wake up their avatar, who go to fight Skarbrand. Well, she nimbly, literally rides in on the bottom of an Eldar Ranger scout craft, like Mission Impossible style, and she drops down and begins
As she's dancing.
She drops down and begins dancing her way, just working the crowd. And all of the Eldar she goes by are so allured by her dance, they can't draw weapons on her. And she marches her happy little self into the Avatar's throne room, where she takes a brief moment of sitting calm to sit on the Avatar's throne. I imagine her foot is bopping along to the beat and tapping the whole time.
And burning,
So she sits down on his throne, and these banshees come rushing in, but then she begins dancing and allures them to her side. But then a piercing wail hits a crescendo, and in comes Jane Zare, because we haven't dropped enough characters' names yet. So Jane Zare comes in, and she, backflips and pins the mask to the roof of the throne room. But as she pins Jane Zare pins the mask to the roof of the throne room, why is Jane Zare there? Because Yvraine was there, and Jane Zare was coming along with Yvraine, which is actually the cool part of the story. So Jane Zare pins the mask to the roof, but as she does that, the mask takes her massive claws and breaks them into the Infinity Circuit, which once that's cracked open, it allows the demons to begin siphoning the souls of Bael'Tan and actually breaking down the Infinity Circuit infrastructure. And she starts to bond or kind of bleed herself into the Infinity Circuit. So these demons are like in the Infinity Circuit of Bael'Tan. The description of this, joking aside, is actually super cool. Yeah. It talks about it just like getting brittle and falling away like leaves, like just this autumn falling of leaves as the at that point, the craft world, she's killing the craft world.
Not bad for 5 power level.
Not too shabby. Hey, a couple backflips will get you there.
Take out an Elder Craft world.
Yeah.
Yvraine birds that you need, which then banishes all of these demon forces off of Bael'Tan and effectively saves the crippled craft world, but it's limping along.
That's stronger than a Primarch, bro. That was a joke Chris and Justin had from years ago.
So that's it.
Little inside joke there.
She dang near downs Bael'Tan all by herself.
That's incredible.
If you like big stories, enjoy gathering
The
storms.
only thing that would have made that story better is if the Avatar busted out into a dance move
and did a backflip.
Too busy fighting Skarbrand.
Justin,
what was yours?
God, I got to follow that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yours can be cool. Mine, that was just dumb.
Well, much like your Black Library lore behind her, it'll be short and sweet. So, obviously, Typhus is one of those characters, steeped in lore from the Heresy to now. He's been responsible for a ton. It gets kind of boring because every planet he goes to, he slaughters the entire thing, turns them into zombies, yada, yada, yada. So it was fun to kind of experience a lighter story with him. And this was him taking a stroll in the Garden of Nurgle. And he's just kind of strolling about, impressing all the demons there with his baritone voice and all of his knowledge of poxes and wonders, when all of a sudden a massive cornate demon army somehow infiltrates into the Garden of Nurgle. And they start chopping down trees and getting all angry at what Nurgle's got going on. Because I think Nurgle and Khorne, throughout the lore, they always have this kind of...
Well, it's also the great game, right?
It is the great game.
All the demons, all the demon Chaos Lords or Chaos Gods are effectively vying for control.
Yeah, the power waxes and wanes, right? So this massive Khorne horde invades the garden, and they're just cutting down everything, killing every quote-unquote living thing, and chopping down all the beautiful trees of Nurgle. And poor Typhus, he's all by himself. He's able to summon, these drones and plague beasts and like this kind of ragtag army, and puts up like a massive defense of this thing and ends up kind of at the climax of the battle, Typhus is fighting the demon prince that's leading this Coronate horde, and he keeps hitting him with these different poxes and whittling him down slowly, and ends up killing him and removing his entrails. Apparently demons have guts. Kind of weird. I guess demons eat. Sure. Takes his guts as a trophy and then brings them before Nurgle's cauldron and like as an offering, right? And even Typhus, while he's like making this offering, is like slowly dying, even in his current form at like the virulent poxes that are emanating from Nurgle's throne. And he's able to like dip his scythe in the pools that like gather around Nurgle's throne and like taint his weapon even further. But he's like, even I can't hang with this.
Now I gotta go.
And he has to peace out, But through that battle, he's able to get his weapon even like touched by Nurgle, literally. But it was cool reading that like this mortal, right, is in the gardens of Nurgle and impressing demons with his knowledge of poxes and even before the battle happened. I'm like,
when they go big,
cool.
They go
Interesting
big.
that you bring up that battle, because mine was the War in the Rift, which where Khorne attacks Nurgle's domain, both in the realm of chaos and in the material realm. This is, as the Great Rift is opening, the great game begins again, and they begin battling against each other. And so while this occurs, like Tzeentch has basically tricked Khorne into attacking.
Of course he has.
So you see, what you just described was all part of the plan from the get-go. Sure. And Tzeentch kind of follows in the wake of the Khorne demons and such. And so this big conflict begins. The great game begins to spill over into reality. And in fact, it's the largest battle of the chaos gods to have ever like materialized in the actual galaxy, as opposed to just in the realms of chaos. So there's like these huge counterattacks and all this thing going on, and these titanic engagements are going on between all the chaos gods, and just the sheer slaughter that is happening as Fate Weaver kind of while Tzeentch and his forces are attacking in the chaos realm, Fate Weaver materializes in the actual universe and begins assaulting Nurgle's realms within the holdings that he's gained since the Great Rift has kind of come about. So anyway, this kind of escalates. Like the whole situation gets worse and worse for chaos, right? And at some point, Tzeentch is like, all right, wait a minute, guys. Like things are getting really bad here.
It gets bad when Tzeentch goes, this party needs to...
This is too much.
He goes,
too much.
I've got an idea.
It could be worse.
Well, that's
it could be Slash saying,
says I have an idea.
I got an idea. Since this has gotten so bad, instead of this, why don't we have a clash of champions? Right? Why don't we each just send our greatest champions forward to fight?
Little parlay.
We'll kind of figure this whole thing out.
Save some Neverborn.
Through that, yeah. And so what ends up happening is, of course, Khorne's like fury and all this is nobody can meet his martial prowess, but the advantage kind of continues to change hands back and forth until Tzeentch's foremost champion, Karos Fate Weaver, kind of emerges victorious through trickery. And so loud is Khorne's bellow of fury over this that all of Karos's illusions are kind of shattered, and the battlefield itself is blasted apart in fire. And even in real space, like things are like the foundations of real space are kind of shaking. And then, after all of this, the great game just kind of resumes again. like the whole thing just kind of starts all over again.
Khorne with the table flip.
Yep. That's exactly right. All because Karos came in and he's like, no, psych, you didn't see this?
You activated my trap card.
Did we not talk about the terrain rules ahead of time? Yeah. Oh, that's a real shame. Because that's how this thing works. Love it.
There it is.
So there it is. Listen, freaking awesome. I love talking about this stuff. This
Every time.
This is great. Yeah. So let's do this. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll close out the show. All right, so that's it for Champions of 40K Powers of Chaos 2, our sequel to the one done over a year ago at this point.
Round 2 of Hero Hammer.
That's right. I think it's always fun to talk about these. We probably won't talk about these again for over a year. So
I got time to read up on Lucius.
Fun to do. You guys got any messages you want to throw out there? Jody, what's going on with the Crush?
We're waiting on a new edition.
So for those who don't know, the Crush is
you have to say it
that way.
The Crush.
Yeah.
It's the only Blitz Bowl exclusive podcast on the internet.
No dancers.
Oh, you've heard
there
it.
might be dancers on the side.
There's dancers.
Yeah, the only Blitz Bowl podcast out there.
Yeah.
Bit of a niche podcast, but it's done very well.
You know, I used to tease Brian about having the niche, all three of his listeners to his Dark Elder exclusive podcast. And then Matt was like, hey, check this out. And I was like, damn it, really ruined a good joke. Man.
2 people.
Both our listeners.
They branched out though. They're the Eldari podcast now.
They have. We have not.
They had to.
We still have
There's only so much you
both
can do.
listeners.
But season 2 of Blitz Bowl coming
Yeah,
out.
we'll
You can
see.
get
We
it
are
at,
we are not dropping content on that.
Can you get it at Barnes & Noble now?
It is up for pre-order now. You can get a hold of it. They're funny enough dropping about the same time as Blood Bowl season 2. Should be hitting shelves soon.
Is there like some rules tweaks and changes?
I would imagine there is.
A few, very few.
Yeah.
Was your friend James Hewitt involved in it?
He was not.
Oh.
We will. Okay, so this is I guess this is a little bit of an exclusive. We will at some point in the future have James Hewitt on again, as we recently had an episode where we sat down and chatted Blitz Bowl with him. He was not involved in season 2, but we are going to sit down and chat on the show with him about season 2 and get his thoughts as the original creator of the game.
This is terrible.
God, we hope so. No, he's too nice of a guy.
No, he's way too nice.
Yeah.
And you're never going to, come in and poop on somebody else's work and that kind of thing. But, he may say, I like this, I don't like this. That's fine. I think that's reasonable.
And Matt and I will get our plays in before we share our thoughts. We don't want to do there's a million hot takes on it right now that are clearly not coming from informed opinions.
Sure.
So
And
Blood Bowl, there you go.
New Blood Bowl 2. Are
Yeah.
you going to become the Blitz Bowl podcast?
Dude, there are so many Blood Bowl
I'm sure
podcasts.
there
I
are.
want no part of that
you go.
world.
Don't want to jump into that arena.
You finally did it.
Those
man.
guys will do a bunch of backflips.
You finally got me to shill for the show.
I
on
know.
the show.
It's a great show, and I think you should.
Hey, Matt does a heck of a job on the tech end, and I just talk purdy.
That's all you got to do.
Talk purdy.
What's going on with Lords and Heroes over there?
We are
Justin?
recording soon-ish.
All right.
Yeah, we'll do an episode soon.
Cool.
I think next week we're recording.
Cool.
And it's been a while.
CK Studios still. I know you guys are playing around with doing some online stuff. That's what I recently had a conversation with Caleb about. So it sounds like you got some interesting stuff. He's got some interesting stuff lined up there.
Yep.
But our next episode will feature none other than Caleb Wissenbeck.
That's right.
And yourself.
It's going to be fun.
It's going to be an interesting episode. So
Absolutely.
we've got the date planned, assuming a tornado doesn't come in and destroy
Why
my
would
home.
you say that?
I'm just telling you. It could happen. Yep. Knock on that wood.
I
You know, I knock on the broken wood of that wall over there?
No,
It's
because I
broken
like it
my
standing.
soul.
He's far enough steeped into Zinch. He sees 9 possible outcomes, and he's good.
You know what? I'll just roll with them all. Just the way it goes.
Bring it.
Just the way it goes. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to episode 210 of the Independent Characters. As you know, we have we're featured on iTunes and other places that you get your podcasts fun. Please leave us a review on iTunes. If you use it, we really do appreciate the reviews. We read them all. It does help other people find the show. And we have a Facebook group and page. The page is kind of the marketing page of the show, but the group is full of really great people with really great content, regardless of what they think of Jody's use of hobby knives. And
Very wise.
and the thing I will say is it is heavily moderated group in the sense that we have some rules around it. You can read about those rules and our community standards and such. And but it's a great place to be, and people seem to enjoy it.
Yeah.
We also have a Patreon, which you can look at. I am working currently on some revisions to the $10 Patreon level, which will involve shorter campaigns rather than like a campaign that runs 12 months. I'm thinking things that run a quarter hit an end, so 3 months, hit an end
Maybe
point.
tie in some Crusade.
And then
in
they
with
all,
that.
yes, I am looking at that right now. So some cool stuff coming there.
So good.
But that gets you access to our Discord channel and stuff, and it's a lot of fun in there
Heck
too.
yeah.
That's a little less moderated than the Facebook group. I mean, sometimes we're like, okay, guys, it is still the independent character.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah, you got that it? You guys got anything else?
That's it.
All right.
All
Well,
good.
until next time, this is Carl.
This is Jody.
And this is Justin.
And we're coming to you from the Astronomicon, where the winds of fate continue to blow and change is inevitable.
And in these chaotic times, it's important that we all try to help out one another.
For sure.
And in the far future, they still haven't solved hair loss,
Yeah.
says Fabius.
Yeah. Look, if they were,
I mean, come on.
if they would have solved hair loss by now, like, you can't tell me Jeff Bezos wouldn't have hair.
Right.
Right. And that
Right.
dude is bald.
You know,
just saying.
if you combined all of our hairstyles, you'd get a little Fabius thing going.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
I could totally rock that skullet. It'd be sweet.
Well, on that note, we'll see you in episode 211. This episode of The Independent Characters is protected by the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find information on the front page at theindependentcharacters.com.